how climate change is directly impacting us. It is impacting our food security, it is impacting our agricultural security, water security, it is impacting, it is making us vulnerable to diseases, for example, in growing temperature, lot of pathogens, lot of vectors. So we are directly vulnerable to marine heat waves, sea surface temperature, tropical cyclones, saltwater intrusion, loss of biodiversity in marine areas, aquaculture. All of that we are directly vulnerable to. We know why it is happening. We know it is happening because of increased amount of greenhouse gases, which is a direct consequence of burning fossil fuel, such as coal, such as petroleum, such as natural gas. We should be very clear about that. We know the main culprits behind global warming. There is a direct correlation between energy consumption and GDP. That as your economy grows, your energy consumption grows. There is a direct correlation. Every country exhibits exactly the same direct correlation. So many governments have done that in European nations, that they promised all of the great environmental initiative, but they buckled under political pressure. They buckled under economic pressure. Right? तो ज्ञान देना आसान है, इम्प्लीमेंट करना मुश्किल है. तो 10 साल बाद हमारा इमिशन 15 kg नहीं होगा, हमारा इमिशन 12 kg होगा, या हमारा इमिशन 13 kg होगा. So our emission will not increase in the same proportion as our growth in GDP. कोई और कंपनी है जो सिलिकॉन को रिफाइन कर रही है, कोई और कंपनी है कुछ और कर रही है. So there is a very complex supply chain, and कोई भी एक पार्ट अगर डिसरप्ट हो गया for any reason, then that leads to shortage of chips. It did happen few years ago, and it can happen even in future. The point is that this requirement that we want to decipher in the script, only human beings can think of that. This machine cannot think. This is what I meant earlier, that we operate at high pedestal, right? We can create, we can innovate, we can think of new ideas. AI cannot. इस पूरे चैप्टर का जो मेन एक फोकस ये है कि AI does not have to be only a challenge. It can also create multiple opportunities. Good afternoon, everyone. So this will be our last class of economic survey, and I'm going to take two chapters, chapter 11 and chapter 13. Chapter 11 is a topic, essentially it's a topic for UPSC examination. It will fit into our discussion of ecology and environment, and the last chapter will fit into our discussion of science and technology. So in your economic survey, the chapter 11 is Climate and Environment, Adaptation Matters. That is the name of the chapter. And before I discuss this chapter and its content, let me first give you overall summary of the chapter. And then I'm going to go into details of what this chapter entails. The main content of this chapter is that it talks about the environmental challenges posed due to global warming, right? And it talks about that there is a lot of pressure on India that we need to transition from coal-based energy and other sources of fossil fuel-based energy to renewable energy sources. Like there is a huge pressure on India. But then this chapter highlights that yes, we should do that, but at the same time, it should be a very calculated approach, that we should not do things without a proper assessment. In this chapter, the economic survey highlights the challenges faced by other countries when they have transitioned from fossil fuel energy sources to other energy sources. Then it has highlighted the challenges which India faces in this entire endeavor. And then it tries to provide some sort of way forward, that given all the challenges, all the sets of challenges, all the issues associated with energy transition, what can we do? What are the initiatives we should take? So it's remarkable. Some of the analysis was fantastic. In fact, there were one or two things I got to learn which I did not know. So I enjoyed reading that chapter. I felt that there is one particular part which is missing in this chapter. That in this chapter you will find many government schemes are simply mentioned there. That India is doing this or India is doing that to tackle this problem or that problem, right? So somehow it gives you a sense that everything is fine in terms of the government initiatives we have taken, everything is fine, but it is not. So I felt that lacked in this chapter, that a critical evaluation of the government schemes itself, that yes, we have taken a lot of initiatives, but what is the status of those initiatives right now? What type of challenges we are facing? And I totally understand that there is a limitation in terms of space also, how many ideas you can cover in just one economic survey. But I did feel that at least for some important government initiatives, a critical evaluation should have been given, right? So that part is missing, but otherwise it's a fantastic chapter. It correctly highlights all the problems related to adaptation as well as in general related to climate change and its associated issues. What India should do, what it can do, given a realistic assessment of our capabilities. And all of those things are very well presented in this chapter. Fantastic, fantastic chapter. Right? So that is what I'm going to discuss. But before I start, I do think that there are certain, I'm very sure that you all already know meaning of all of these words. But at the same time, I still felt that we should briefly discuss meaning of these words. Once we are clear about meaning of these words, then we will be able to better understand the content of this particular chapter. Okay, so we all know about global warming and climate change. A global environmental problem, perhaps an existential threat humanity witnesses right now, is average increase in Earth's temperature. And we generally measure this average increase, we compare this average increase compared to what it was before Industrial Revolution. So if I take mid of 19th century, let's say 1850 to 1914, this is the time period where second industrial revolution happened. The first happened in mid of 18th century in England. The second industrial revolution happened in Western Europe, in America, in Japan, in Canada, all of these countries. So burning of coal started in first industrial revolution in England, but in second industrial revolution it happened on an unprecedented scale. That all of these Western countries, the developed nations of this world, which right now are developed nations of the world, they burnt lot of coal, and that burning of coal essentially pumped huge amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas that led to an increase in the concentration of carbon dioxide. And because of greenhouse effect, the overall heat content of planet Earth kept on increasing on an average, and that gradually increased the temperature of the planet. So planet witnessed an increase in temperature, and we often compare the increase in temperature what it was before pre-industrial level. So let's say if I take 19th century as my base, then compared to 19th century, if you look at the data of 2024, then our average increase in temperature has crossed by more than 1.2 degrees Celsius. Right, and the target, and one of the very important global agreement here, which I'm going to discuss, is Paris Agreement, and Paris Agreement aims to limit the temperature increase by 1.5 degrees Celsius and at max by 2 degrees Celsius. Like the target is 2 degrees Celsius, but if possible, the temperature increase should not exceed beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius. But 1.5 degrees Celsius as of now, everybody knows it's simply not a realistic target, okay? We should be very clear about that, that it will look good on piece of paper, it's not a realistic target, given the emissions which are happening right now. That increase in temperature, that also leads to multiple other effects. So climate change is a bigger word. Climate change essentially means average increase in temperature, but along with that, many other things like how local as well as global climate patterns are changing on this planet. So for example, how we are witnessing more extreme weather events, or how we are witnessing heat waves or cyclones or altered rainfall pattern, altered wind pattern, wildfires, examples of wildfires. All of these together, I can include all of those things together along with increase in average rise in temperature as climate change. So climate change can be thought of as a bigger word. Global warming is one part of the climate change. Okay, so that is the first thing, that we all should be very clear about the meaning of the word global warming and climate change. We should particularly appreciate that because of global warming and climate change, we should know the vulnerability of different part of the world. And in this particular discussion, we should know the vulnerability of India. And I can divide this vulnerability into many parts, that how climate change impacts us, or how climate change impacts the world. So I can talk about, for example, first, uh, some environmental impact. That how climate change, for example, is changing poles of planet, how it is changing Arctic, how it is changing Antarctic, how it is changing oceans of the world, how it is changing land of the world, right? And as a result, how it is changing our society and our economics and our politics. So we can talk about climate change briefly, and I'm going to discuss that briefly here. An immediate impact is increase in, so let's start with how we are directly affected by climate change. An immediate impact is growing incidences of heat waves. Right, abhi February hai, and you already feel that temperature is very high. Right, so growing incidences of heat wave and a direct impact that leads to heat related stress, that reduces workers' productivity, heat strokes, all of those things are becoming more and more common. It reduces agricultural productivity. Many crops suffer because of climate change. It alters availability of water because it adversely affects monsoon pattern. तो आपका जो rainfall है, that is not very reliable. That often you find that there are delays in monsoon. And we also find that the gap period in monsoon, that is increasing. And overall we find that there is a decrease in rainfall. But at the same time, the decrease is not uniform. At some places you have excessive rainfall, at some other places you have drought-like condition, right? So how climate change is directly impacting us? It is impacting our food security, it is impacting our agricultural security, water security, it is impacting, it is making us vulnerable to diseases. For example, in growing temperature, lot of pathogens, lot of vectors, they essentially can grow exponentially, such as mosquitoes. And mosquitoes can grow even in those areas where traditionally they are not found. It's all of this is how we are directly affected by climate change. But then we can also look at the global patterns, how global patterns, environmental patterns are changing. That how melting of Arctic changes the structure, fundamental structure of the Arctic. How melting of snow and ice in Antarctic and permafrost and Himalayas glaciers, how that leads to sea level rise. That sea level rise is increasing. And that sea level rise essentially can lead to salt water intrusion. It can increase salinity of fresh water. It can lead to coastal flooding. How increase in sea surface temperature makes us vulnerable to things like cyclones. Right? More and more tropical cyclones are occurring on this planet. So many marine species and many polar species are adversely affected by climate change. So we can also have an entire discussion about the impact of climate change in detail. I'm not going to do that. I simply wanted to introduce with this idea that we should first appreciate that many countries of this world are vulnerable to climate change. And let's talk about the vulnerability of India briefly before I go to the next part. We have a coastline of what? 7,000 kilometers, more than 7,000 kilometers. So we are directly vulnerable to marine heat waves, sea surface temperature, tropical cyclones, saltwater intrusion, loss of biodiversity in marine areas, aquaculture. All of that we are directly vulnerable to. Okay. Then you have Himalaya, the Great Barrier. Himalaya is called third pole of the world because of the glaciers, because of the ice at Himalaya. Melting of that ice and that glacier. Think about how many rivers are supplied, the water supply of many rivers happens because of those glaciers. But as glaciers retreat, so there will be an increase in water supply in river. That is going to happen, by the way. That can cause flooding, however. But at the same time, as glaciers retreat, after some time, there will be a decrease in water supply in Himalayan river. We also find that many Himalayan states are vulnerable to what we call glacial lake outburst floods. That glacial lakes made by moraines due to depositional activity of glaciers. And those glaciers lake, if they fall, if those moraines crack, then it will lead to a sudden outburst of water. And this has happened, by the way, this has happened in Sikkim, this has happened in Arunachal Pradesh, and many Himalayan states are vulnerable to glacial lake outburst flood. And then let's come to the mainland. Let's come to the northern plain. Let's come to the Deccan Plateau, the central highland. we are witnessing more and more frequent heat waves. All of the problems I highlighted earlier, heat strokes, heat-related diseases, food security, we are directly vulnerable to these problems. We know why it is happening. We know it is happening because of increased amount of greenhouse gases, which is a direct consequence of burning fossil fuel, such as coal, such as petroleum, such as natural gas. We should be very clear about that. We know the main culprits behind global warming. Okay, so this is, we should know in the first part that we should have in our back of our mind, we should be very clear about global warming and climate change. We should be very clear about the impact of global warming and climate change, and particularly how India is vulnerable to global warming and climate change. We should know that also. Okay. The second part which we should know, that there is a global convention, a legally binding convention. This convention is called United Nations Framework Convention to Combat Climate Change. This convention has a governing structure. That governing structure is called Conference of Party. In shortcut, it is called COPs. This convention was set up in 1992, and every year, the COP of this convention, it has a meeting. It happens in November or December. So for example, COP29 just happened few months ago in Baku, Azerbaijan. You must have read that in current affairs. The goal of UNFCCC is that how to tackle climate change, and particularly how to invest in mitigation and adaptation. So now we are coming to the crux of this chapter, what this chapter is all about, right?
Online classes offer convenience, but serious aspirants know that UPSC success demands structure, focus, and personal support, found only in physical classrooms. Classroom learning enables real-time interaction, ensuring no question goes unanswered. This immediate feedback fosters a deeper understanding and builds confidence. After-class interactions with faculty turns doubts into discussions and guidance into growth. These personal moments are the stepping stones to your UPSC success. Peer discussions in classrooms foster collaboration, critical thinking, and camaraderie, qualities essential for UPSC success. Classroom tests mirrors the intensity of the UPSC exam with real-time supervision and in-depth evaluations. Every test becomes a learning experience. Mock interviews in classrooms recreate the pressure of UPSC interviews. With constructive feedback, aspirants refine their responses and build confidence for the real test. A structured environment keeps you disciplined and focused. With fixed schedules and personal accountability, classrooms ensure you stay on track. Faculty members regularly interact with their peers, ensuring students get diverse perspectives on complex subjects. This enriches the learning process and keeps the curriculum dynamic and relevant. Classrooms don't just teach, they inspire. Step into the world with confidence and turn dreams into milestones.
When we talk about climate change, there are two very important keywords we should appreciate. The first keyword we should appreciate is mitigation, which simply means that all the factors which are increasing more and more amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, we need to reduce emission of greenhouse gases. So mitigation, for example, will involve that you are investing into energy efficiency. You are investing into renewable energy such as solar energy, wind energy, green hydrogen, geothermal, hydropower, right? You are trying to reduce your emissions from automobile sector. You're trying to reduce your emission from power plants by investing into energy efficiency also. So this is what mitigation is, that you are trying to tackle the climate change directly, right? You want to reduce the impact of climate change by directly tackling the factors contributing to it, okay? And then comes adaptation. Adaptation means that you acknowledge climate change as a reality. You know that climate change is causing more flooding events. You know climate change is making you vulnerable in terms of food security. You know climate change is causing coastal erosion. So then you invest in infrastructure. That infrastructure will be infrastructure in agriculture, in disaster resilience, in early warning systems. So for example, let's say you focus on those crops which are climate resistant crops, that despite drought and despite salinity, the crop output does not decrease. You focus into changing your cropping pattern again to make your agriculture sustainable. You focus in developing infrastructure which either can sustain more frequent cyclones and ocean surges, or even if it is getting destroyed, it can be very quickly erected. कि हमारा जो loss of destruction है वो बहुत कम हो और हम वापस से इस पूरे के पूरे इंफ्रा को हम डेवलप कर सकें. So when you acknowledge climate change, it is happening, and then how to adjust ourselves, how to adjust our lifestyle, how to adapt to those changes, such type of projects, we will call them adaptation project, okay? But both of these projects require a lot of money. They require a lot of thinking, that human mind is known for its creative thinking. We have to find solutions, innovative solutions. But it goes without saying that all of those solutions, they require a lot of money. There is a reason why fossil fuel sources are so popular. First is they are very cheap. Very simple. They are very cheap to burn and produce energy. Second is they are reliable. That I can burn coal at any point of time. I can burn diesel, natural gas at any point of time. Based on my demand, I can maintain my supply. Okay, so they are reliable. These are the two biggest factors why there is so much of still uses of fossil fuel dependence all across the world. So asking countries, or in general, countries transitioning to mitigating steps, investing into solar, wind and other type of initiatives, as well as investing in adaptation, which requires changing your cropping pattern, which requires improving your infrastructure, which requires early warning system, all of that needs money. So an immediate question then arises is that where will that money come from? And hence I have used this word here, climate financing. That to finance such type of projects, who will be responsible for this financing? Okay. And then the next keyword which we should know here, this keyword is common but differentiated responsibility and respective capabilities. This keyword is based on this idea that if you think about all of the current environmental problems, they essentially are due to historic emissions by developed countries. Now developed countries are at a level where their per capita income is very high. They have reduced, they do not burn, for example, coal anymore. They still burn other fossil fuel such as natural gas and petroleum product, but the burning of coal has reduced significantly in most of the developed nations. So developing countries will ask developed nations that you have more responsibility. You have a historic responsibility. We became independent after World War II. When we became independent, the biggest challenge we faced was that a larger part of our population is living below poverty line. There is a direct correlation between energy consumption and GDP. That as your economy grows, your energy consumption grows. There is a direct correlation. Every country exhibits exact the same direct correlation. अब वो एनर्जी कहाँ से आएगा वो दूसरी बात है, बट आपका एनर्जी कंजम्पशन बढ़ेगा as your economy grows. So developing nations will say that growing economy is very important to ensure that more and more people come out of poverty line. We want prosperity in our nation, and because of that, producing energy at low cost is paramount for us. So developing countries will demand that developed countries should take more initiatives. First. Second, they should also support developing nations, both in terms of finance and in terms of technology. That if you have technology available, for example, if let's say Germany has developed energy efficient solar panels at low cost, then sharing that technology with countries like India and Brazil. That will be a demand of developing nations. That developed nations need to acknowledge their historic responsibilities, and they need to fund the mitigation and adaptation projects in developing nations, and they also need to transfer technology. Okay. Developed nations will say that ये बड़े दिन से चले आ रहे हैं, that your developing nations are trying to wriggle out of their responsibility, right? So there is this debate, there is this issue between developed countries and developing nations, that both will accuse each other of not doing enough, right? And this debate happens each and every year. This debate happened a lot in Baku, in Azerbaijan, COP29. Okay. The next keyword which we should know चलो ठीक है, we know that global warming, climate change is due to emissions of greenhouse gases. But then there are two ways to measure emissions. The first way to measure emission is total emission. कितना total carbon dioxide equivalent gas आपके जो industries हैं, जो आपके economic activities हैं, how much of total CO2 you are emitting, okay? And the second indicator will be the total emission by total population of that particular country. We call this per capita emission, right? Ki India is emitting 100 kg of CO2, but there are 50 people in India. So per capita emission will be 2 kg per person. Versus America is emitting, let's say, 80 kg, but there are only 10 people in America, right? So total emission of America is less, but in per capita emission, America is 4 times bigger than India. Simple maths, that total versus total by total population. So total is total emission, per capita emission is total emission by total population. अब many developing, जैसे अगर आप total emission में देखो तो China is highest, America is second, European Union as a region is third, India is fourth. अगर आप European Union as a region हटा दो, country wise देखो सिर्फ, then India is third. You have China, you have US, you have India in per capita, in total emission. You calculate per capita emission and India is half of global average. जो इंडिया का रैंकिंग होगा वो कुछ 60वें 70वें नंबर पे होगा. It will be at some 60th or 70th position. That in per capita emission, our per capita emission is less than half of the global average emission. If I take the total global emission, divide the total population of the globe, that will be the per capita emission of the globe. इंडिया का per capita emission उससे आधे से भी कम है. And that India will use this whenever negotiations will happen at COP. India will use this. India will ask developed nation that our per capita emission is still very less. Yes, we are producing more energy from coal, but our per capita emission is still very less. It is much less than what even today, despite all the energy transition you have done, it is much less than even you guys. And India will say that because of that, we still have a lot of window that we should emit or we should burn. We should be allowed to burn more fossil fuel, right? So before you give lectures to India, you should first look at other factors. And in any case, developed nations, they exhibit many hypocrisies, which I'm going to discuss subsequently, okay? So this is again, I will repeat this. This is a source of debate between developed and developing nations. Developed nations will accuse India कि India जो है roadblock create कर रही है climate negotiations में. India बोलेगी कि हमारे पास एक ज़्यादा बड़ा responsibility जो है, that more and more people should come out of the poverty. तो इस पूरे chapter का जो एक main crux है, वो ये है that as a responsible nation we must reduce our emission. कोई doubt नहीं है, ये हमको करना ही है. ये इसमें कोई किसी के मन में doubt नहीं होना चाहिए that we should reduce our coal-based consumption. We should increase our capacity of renewable energy and energy efficiency. But it shouldn't be because of Western nations who are at some, right now they are behaving that they are on high pedestal, but they are not. They shouldn't be on high pedestal. Even today they exhibit a lot of hypocrisy. And in general, they have this historical record of emission and they need to take care of that emission first before they ask emission reduction from countries like India. So that will be one of the main points. That is one of the main points this particular survey talks about. And then there is a concept of nationally determined contribution under Paris Agreement. So Paris Agreement was signed. It came into existence in 2015. COP21 of UNFCCC. So this was COP29. When COP21 happened in 2015 in Paris, then Paris Agreement came into existence. Paris Agreement became a universally legally binding agreement. Of course, countries can withdraw from it. Recently, US withdrew from Paris Agreement. आपने पढ़ा होगा अभी news में that America is not part of Paris Agreement anymore. But it became a legally binding agreement for all the countries of the world, including developing nations. But rather than UNFCCC asking countries कि आप ये करो, UNFCCC asked that you tell your own targets. कि आप अपना target खुद से बताओ. And आप एक timeline बताओ that what will be the timeline in which you are going to achieve that target. And ideally you should keep revising that target every 5 years, right? So this concept is called nationally determined contribution, that rather than UNFCCC imposing targets on the nations as a top-down manner. Let's follow a bottom-up approach, and let's ask countries that they know their own economic limitations, they know their own capabilities, and based on that, countries should decide that what are they going to achieve, and they should achieve that. That goes without saying, okay? Chalo. So any doubt if you have in any of these terms which I have mentioned, you can ask questions, yes. Yeah. It's not a linear relationship. It's not a linear relationship. The question he's asking is that India is the third largest emitter, and why average temperature in India is less than global average. पहले तो ये डेटा आपने कहाँ से पढ़ा आपने? जो मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ अर्थ साइंसेस का रिपोर्ट आप जो अगर आप कोट कर रहे हो, I will tell you जो इंडियन एक्सप्रेस का जो डेटा है, जो हमारे पास लास्ट डेटा है इंडिया स्पेसिफिक जो डेटा है, that is from a report released by Ministry of Earth Sciences that was released in 2019, and वो डेटा पॉइंट आप देख लेना, वो डेटा जो भी है वो 2016 तक का डेटा है, that it has compared the change in from 1900 to 2015-2016, and in that data the average temperature of India, in the average temperature increase in Indian subcontinent was shown to be about, if I'm not mistaken, less than 1 degree Celsius. It was less than 1 degree Celsius. If you will look at the recent data, I'm very sure it should be more than 1 degree Celsius. But we do not have India specific data that what is the average increase in temperature of India. That is the first, that we do not have the recent data. But second, it's not a जो हीट बजट ऑफ प्लानट अर्थ है उसको जोग्राफिक पॉलिटिकल बाउंड्री से कोई लेना देना नहीं है. मतलब इंडिया अगर इमिट कर रहा है, चाहे वो लंदन इमिट कर रहा है, चाहे कैलिफोर्निया इमिट कर रहा है, उसको दैट इमिशन ऑफ कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड इज नॉट बाउंड बाय पॉलिटिकल बाउंड्रीज ऑफ द नेशन. सो इट्स नॉट अ लीनियर रिलेशनशिप. Multiple factors decide the heat budget. Albedo decides heat budget, concentration of CO2 for how long, cloud patterns, oceans, multiple factors decide heat budget, okay? And multiple factors decide that what will be the increase in temperature. But one thing is common, that all across the planet we are witnessing a gradual increase in temperature. There can be regional variations. Arctic पे जो average increase in temperature है, compared to what it was 100 years ago, is 10 degrees Celsius. 10 degrees Celsius. Now there are multiple other factors which play a very important role. In Antarctica it is 0.5 degrees Celsius. In Eastern Antarctica it is 0.5 degrees Celsius. अब वो क्यों है? तो उसके खुद के अपने factors हैं. I will not go into those factors that why it is so. But the point is that it's not a linear relationship, right? Multiple factors dictate that what will be the average temperature rise of a particular place on planet. So when I said 1.2 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial level, I'm talking about the global average temperature. I'm not talking about one specific place, okay? Any other question in any of these terms which I have mentioned on this slide? So let's now jump to the content of this chapter. The chapter starts with talking about the recent COP29, which occurred at Azerbaijan, Baku. It was called Finance COP. That why it was called Finance COP? Because the main agenda in the last COP was that for mitigation, adaptation, as well as there is another word called loss and damage, that for mitigation, adaptation, loss and damage, we need to create a fund. That fund should support developing countries of this world for mitigation projects, for adaptation project. Many independent think tanks, this is not a government data, many independent think tanks gave a data that for mitigation and adaptation, we need $5 to $6 trillion by 2030, right? How much was promised? 300 billion annually by 2035. And this was promised. And developed nations have not fulfilled their promise in the past. And the past indicator, if anything, it tells us that 300 billion जो है वो बोला गया है, कितने पैसे आएंगे, that's a separate thing. So ये immediate एक problem जो है हमको जो दिखता है, which I mentioned earlier, that this conflict between developed and developing nations, that concept of common but differentiated responsibility and respective capabilities, which entails developed countries to support developing nations in their endeavors towards mitigation and adaptation. That has fell short by a remarkable number, not by some near value, by a remarkable number, that the requirement across developing nations of this world is more than $5 trillion. The promised money was $300 billion, and that was promised. How much will come, that will only time will tell. Okay. Then the survey talks about India's vulnerability, that how India is vulnerable, how Himalayan states are vulnerable, how coastal states are vulnerable, how Northern Plain and Central Highland and Deccan Plateau, how those regions are vulnerable. Without going into all of that detail, it talks about that. And then immediately, the survey talks about that recently, Ministry of Environment, Forest, Climate Change announced National Adaptation Plan. And hence the name of the chapter, that adaptation matters. Yes, we need to invest towards mitigation, that goes without saying. But a common theme all across planet has been found. There is a very famous organization called UNEP, United Nations Environment Program. They release many reports. Two of those reports, the first report is called Emissions Gap Report. The second report is called Adaptation Gap Report. In Emission Gap Report, they essentially mention that to reduce, to achieve the target of 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2 degrees Celsius, how much carbon dioxide emission should happen and how much is happening. So how much more reduction is required, hence the word Emission Gap Report. In Adaptation Gap Report, so first report they release is Emission Gap Report, and then they release another very important report, that is called Adaptation Gap Report. And here they talk about that for adaptation projects, how much money is required and how much money is actually being invested right now. How much money is actually being invested right now. And it highlights that many countries, they do not take adaptation seriously. And because of that, this National Adaptation Plan, recently announced by Ministry of Environment, Forest, Climate Change, and because of that, the title of this chapter, that adaptation matters. Where we are investing in adaptation, the chapter talks about that in which areas we are investing into adaptation. We are investing in adaptation in agriculture, and there is a separate chapter. आपके सर्वे में एक चैप्टर था एग्रीकल्चर एंड फूड मैनेजमेंट, तो वहाँ पे जो भी इनिशिएटिव्स हैं, one of the most important initiative will be, let's say, national action plan on national mission on sustainable agriculture or soil health card और जो भी organic farming को लेके जो भी initiatives हैं. So for agriculture, what type of measures we are taking for adaptation? That is covered in a separate chapter. What else we are doing? So in this chapter, I found that apart from the analysis part, it was also a lot of amalgamation of many government schemes at one place, that government schemes across multiple domains. जैसे what type of investment we are doing in adaptation in urban areas. The survey talks about National Mission on Sustainable Habitat. That is another national mission launched under a larger plan called National Action Plan on Climate Change. The climate change से tackle करने के लिए till date government has announced 9 missions under it. One of that mission is National Mission on Sustainable Habitat, which focuses in urban areas. It focuses upon waste management, water management, energy and green building, mobility and air quality, urban planning, green cover, biodiversity. So this was my problem in this survey, that all the good words are there, but how much we are actually, what is our current achievement, what type of challenges we are facing, that part is missing. So it has mentioned the schemes, but it has not mentioned the status of this scheme, that how much of the stated objective they have been actually able to fulfill. So schemes की कमी नहीं है हमारे पास. We also have this scheme called Amrut scheme, which is closely collaborating with Ministry of Urban Affairs, focusing particularly on water quality as well as water quantity. That जो worsening water quality है, जो water pollution है, उसको हम कैसे tackle करें. and जो decreased water availability है due to multiple factors, उसको हम कैसे tackle करें. So that is the main objective of this mission called Amrut mission, along with energy efficiency, that how we need to be more energy efficient, that we are doing the same economic activities, but we need to improve our energy efficiency. Government has launched this River Cities Alliance, that many cities connected via river and working together. This city is not working in isolation, but making an integrated plan to tackle sustainable river management. So that is another scheme government has launched, Urban River Management Plan and River Cities Alliance. So it goes on to talk about adaptation projects in other areas. For example, in a table manner, it talks about that one of the plan is this vertical garden using plastic. कि आप दो तरीके, एक तरीके से आप गार्डनिंग करके, बहुत सारे बेनिफिट्स हैं गार्डनिंग के, राइट? But you are also able to manage that plastic waste in a more sustainable manner. So it has talked about this, that we can do vertical gardening. हमारा land use कम होगा, हमारा जो plastic waste है, that can be managed in a more sustainable manner. The survey talks about some other schemes in coastal region. What type of adaptation projects we are doing in coastal region? Remember, coastal regions are vulnerable. There is a concept here which we should know, that when we talk about climate change, we divide impact of climate change as slow onset events and fast onset events. Now, slow onset events are which are happening very gradually, slowly. For example, sea level rise. For example, increase in sea surface temperature, loss of biodiversity. These are slow onset events. Melting of glacier. These are slow events. They're happening for quite some time. But due to this slow onset event, sometimes you also witness what is called fast onset event. Fast onset event will be a cyclonic wind. That a gradual increase in sea surface temperature, but then at a localized place the temperature is very high, and that leading to more frequency of cyclone. Storm surges, localized heavy rainfall. These are called fast onset events. So fast onset events are regional. Their impact is regional, but for when it happens, it causes a lot of damage. Slow onset events, you do not immediately see them. You gradually see their impact, but the impact here is not regional. Many slow onset events, they have a global impact. चाहे वो sea level rise हो, चाहे melting of glacier हो, चाहे वो biodiversity loss हो. Okay. So what initiatives we have taken? A very nice initiative has been talked in your survey. I will remember this. Such topics I will remember for prelims examination, and you can also quote them. You can also use them in answer writing. So there is a scheme called MISHTI initiative, and MISHTI initiative is, the full form is Mangrove Initiative for Shoreline Habitats and Tangible Incomes. So mangrove ecosystems play a very important role in protecting coastal regions from cyclones, storm surges. Mangrove also plays a very important role in providing habitat to a lot of aquatic species, such as fishes and many species of crustaceans. So the coastal community is not directly dependent for their food security and for their economic activity on mangrove, but they are also dependent upon mangrove. That mangrove is a natural barrier which reduces the impact of disasters like cyclone and storm surges. So to ensure that mangrove does not get degraded, there is a scheme called MISHTI scheme. I will remember that. I will remember that for prelims examination, or also for as a scheme for mains examination. And this is being implemented under MG Narega. MG Narega jo right to work hai. So a lot of mangrove, lot of initiatives under this particular scheme is being taken under MG Narega, and it is also taken under what we call CAMPA, compensatory afforestation. जैसे एक गवर्नमेंट का एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट जो इनिशिएटिव है विच स्टार्टेड इन फॉरेस्ट कंजर्वेशन एक्ट 1980. That whenever you are converting a forest land for non-forestry purposes, then state governments cannot do that all by themselves. They need approval from union government. And in any case, Whenever this happens, an equivalent amount of land needs to be afforested or reforested. Hence the word compensatory afforestation. So Kampa initiatives जो है, they are also helping in this MIST initiative. That if a forest land is being cleared for some commercial development, any economic growth, then compensatory afforestation can happen as part of this initiative, increasing the mangrove cover of the country. Then there is a scheme called National Coastal Mission Program, which apart from conserving mangrove, it also talks about conserving coral reefs. That coral reefs are very important again for biodiversity. Think about it. Coral reefs, they cover 0.1% of ocean's area, and they provide shelter to more than 25% marine species. So in area less than 0.1%, but provide shelter to more than 25% of marine species. Very important, productive ecosystem. Then we have this scheme called Enhancing Climate Resilience on India's Coastal Community, where the focus is restoration of degraded areas as well as watersheds. What is a watershed? What is a watershed? Perfect. So आप ऐसे समझ लो कि कोई भी water body को imagine करो, any water body. Imagine a nearby water body in your village or in your town, in your society. Imagine from all the land, this particular water body receives water from, right? So for its water recharge, it is dependent upon the nearby land, and that land essentially is watershed. So if you think about it, this entire world can be thought of as a series of interconnected watersheds. That small bodies being recharged by some land, and that of course leads to groundwater percolating to groundwater, but it also plays a very important role. That think about a river, for example, all of the places through which river is accumulating water, and that river goes on to ocean. So if I think of ocean as a large water body, then all of the patch of land through which ocean is getting water, I can think of watershed of that ocean. So I can define watershed for any water body. Lot of watersheds are being degraded in name of economic growth. Many wetlands, many river channels, they are being encroached upon in the name of agriculture, or in the name of mining, or in the name of industrial growth or residential settlement. So the goal of this India's coastline, this particular scheme here, is that we need to restore such type of degraded land. So these are adaptation projects in coastal regions. Then scheme goes on to talk about Jal Shakti Abhiyan, catch the rain. The focus here is rainwater harvesting. Now this is my another complaint. Jal Shakti Abhiyan is a failure. Jal Shakti Abhiyan has not given, so Jal Jeevan Mission has been quite successful. Jal Jeevan Mission ka focus kya hai? Connecting all the households, rural households particularly, to tap water. That has been successful, but the Jal Shakti Abhiyan tha, that was supposed to take funding and support from many other government schemes. It was supposed to be a community-driven program. But वही है कि फिर ये आपको PPT and वो सारी चीज़ें दिखेंगी. Actual जो इसका impact है बहुत ही negligible है. Because you did not build capacity, you did not create a separate fund, a separate financing mechanism for this scheme. And because of that, this has not been a very successful scheme. So this was my continuous complaint while reading this chapter, that many of these schemes are simply mentioned without doing any critical evaluation of the scheme itself. In 2024, the theme was Nari Shakti se Jal Shakti. The focus here is rainwater harvesting, that how can we effectively utilize rainwater. How to manage our groundwater resources. There is this program called National Aquifer Mapping Project, a research survey, जितने भी हमारे groundwater resources हैं, जो aquifers हैं, to know about them, to know the extent of the water, to know all the sources on which this aquifer is dependent upon recharging. Then if the amount of groundwater recharge is reducing, then why is it reducing? Trying to figure that out first. If it is getting polluted by any type of pollution, then what are the sources of those pollutants? This is part of National Aquifer Mapping Project, a central sector scheme 100% funded by Government of India. Government has also this portal called Bhu Neer Portal by Central Groundwater Authority. You should know this. This is a very important body. This is a statutory body under Environment Protection Act 1986. Different from another body which is called Central Groundwater Board that has its own set of objective. This body as well as board, they both operate under Ministry of Jal Shakti. But this body is a regulatory body. कि अब कितना ग्राउंड वाटर कोई इंडस्ट्री कितना ग्राउंड वाटर एक्सट्रैक्ट कर सकती है, उसका उनको परमिशन लेना पड़ेगा, उसका एक नो ऑब्जेक्शन सर्टिफिकेट होगा. That NOC will exactly determine that in this much time, this much groundwater can be extracted after paying the due. And ये NOC आपको renew करना पड़ेगा. So this, all of that is the responsibility of Central Groundwater Authority. And they recently created this portal called Bhu Neer portal to manage groundwater resources more effectively. And then survey gives some really remarkable examples such as Maura Multi-Purpose Reservoir Project of Meghalaya or Jal Sanchay Bhagidari Jan Bhagidari. I will remember this initiative in Gujarat. I will remember this as a fodder point in answer writing. जैसे वाटर रिलेटेड प्रॉब्लम हर साल यूपीएससी पूछती है मेंस में, तो जब ये आएगा तो मैं ऐसे अगर मुझे बढ़िया एग्जांपल्स देने हो then I can use these things as example. Maybe there can be a question in prelims also कि ये जो मल्टीपर्पस रिजर्वायर प्रोजेक्ट है कहाँ का है. ऐसे भी फैक्चुअल क्वेश्चन यूपीएससी पूछ चुकी है पास्ट में, आगे भी पूछ सकती है. So maybe there can be a question in prelims also. But if it is given in survey, I will remember this fact. But I will also remember this, that this is a very good example, very good fodder point if I'm writing an answer about water conservation. Okay. So many initiatives have been taken. Now the theme was, as I said earlier, there is a lot of pressure on India that you need to reduce your carbon footprint. You need to transition. अभी ये जो हमारा energy basket है, you need to change that energy basket. कि यहाँ पे जो coal का percentage है, that should gradually reduce and other sources should increase. Yes, it should happen. But let's look at what type of challenges many other part of the world is facing. And they also exhibit many hypocrisy. Okay. European Union recently launched a plan called Repower EU plan. इसका एक ना पूरा एक background है. European Union is dependent a lot upon Russian gas supply. When Ukraine war started, then one of the things European Union wanted to do is that they wanted to reduce their dependence upon. Russia was blackmailing European Union that अगर आप कुछ करोगे, यूक्रेन को सपोर्ट करोगे डायरेक्टली और इनडायरेक्टली, तो हम आपका गैस सप्लाई खत्म कर देंगे या कम कर देंगे. यू आर गोइंग टू सफर फ्रॉम प्रॉब्लम. तो अब ये देखो ना, ये in one sense I am fan of European Union that despite all of the blackmailing by Vladimir Putin, they resisted that blackmail. And it is the, again, I am a huge fan of when human beings apply their mind and think of innovative solutions. And European Union, as of now, they have improved a lot. They have reduced their, yes, the prices of energy increased a lot in countries like Germany particularly, but then it has stabilized. It has come down. It has not again come back to the original level, but it has come down. And they changed their global supply chain. India played a very important role, by the way, in doing that. And multiple initiatives were taken. Investments in France, for example, was shielded from that because France produces a lot of nuclear energy. उनका जो nuclear energy production है, वो बहुत ज़्यादा है. Germany somehow after Fukushima disaster in 2011 decided that we are going to switch off all of our nuclear energy plant. And that actually made them quite vulnerable to the blackmail by Vladimir Putin. Okay. But nonetheless, the survey highlights that European Union recently launched Repower EU, where focus is investment in liquefied natural gas. So you are investing in a fossil fuel, right? And that to reduce dependence upon Russian gas supply. But the point is that आप अभी खुद से energy transition नहीं कर पा रहे हो ठीक से, then you are asking or dictating rest of the world that other countries like India, they should reduce emission. US started drilling oil in Alaska, and you would think that this happened by Donald Trump. No, this happened when Joe Biden was president. And of course, Donald Trump his first speech was drill, drill, and baby drill. That was the first speech he made after becoming president, that we are going to drill a lot. Right, so developed nations were supposed to reduce their emission first, given that they already are much higher in terms of per capita income, and then asking developing nations to reduce carbon footprint, right? And then that highlights the hypocrisy of developed countries. Survey has given a very nice chart here, comparing 1992 and 2023 कि जो country, ये आपको chart याद नहीं रखना है, ये बिल्कुल भी याद नहीं रखना है. ये chart सिर्फ और सिर्फ इसलिए है to highlight the hypocrisy of developed countries कि developed countries का 20 साल का आप compare कर लो energy basket, and 20 साल में आप देखो fossil fuel कितना reduce हुआ है, and you'll realize that it has reduced very, very less. They still are burning a lot of fossil fuel. It's just that they are not burning coal, but they still are burning diesel. They still are burning natural gas, but they still are burning a lot of fossil fuel. Two countries do stand out though. France particularly stands out. France per capita emission is less than global average. Even though it is a developed country, one of the highest per capita income country, but France has one of the lowest per capita emission also, and that is because of the contribution of nuclear, which even in 1992 was 33%, and it has increased even more to 35%. That tells you that nuclear is a good solution, okay? So what type of problems developed nations have faced? This energy transition, it has not been very easy for many developed countries. That doing everything from renewable energy sources has its own set of issues, which I'm going to discuss from the next slide. Congestion cost. Congestion cost essentially means that आपका जो demand है बहुत ज़्यादा है, your renewable energy, जो भी आपका renewable energy पे dependent, जो भी energy basket है, it is not able to fulfill that requirement. Grid limitations. Solar energy जो supply है वो fix नहीं है. And sun is very bright during afternoon, आप बहुत सारा solar energy produce करोगे. But evening में बहुत कम produce करोगे, रात में कुछ नहीं करोगे. So there is a fluctuating supply in our power grids. And power grids are not built for such high fluctuation. तो अब solution क्या है? Solution है कि आप energy storage में invest करो. Invest in batteries, powerful batteries which can store huge amount of energy. But that makes solar energy very expensive also. So solar energy production is very cheap. But if you want to maintain a reliable supply of solar power, then you need to upgrade your power grid first, and you need to invest a lot into energy storage solution second, and those things make solar energy very expensive. And developed nations have realized this. And hence, when they transitioned from coal, what did they transition towards? Natural gas. Natural gas is a fossil fuel. It's not as bad as coal. Yes, I will take that. Coal is the worst fossil fuel. But it still is a fossil fuel. You still are not decarbonizing your economy that much. There is a continuous examples fall back to fossil fuel. कि आपने कुछ transition शुरू किया, then you realize the challenges that your grid is fluctuating. आपका energy supply demand mismatch हो रहा है. There is a political pressure. कोई और political party बोल रही है कि देखो energy cost हो गया है, हम आएंगे हटा देंगे सब कुछ. तो फिर गवर्नमेंट भी बोलेगी कि हाँ ठीक है, फिर आप उसको क्यों हम वेट करने, उसको क्यों मौका दें, हम ही कर देते हैं. So many governments have done that in European nations, that they promised all of the great environmental initiative, but they buckled under political pressure. They buckled under economic pressure, right? तो ज्ञान देना आसान है, implement करना मुश्किल है. So the survey has essentially highlighted such hypocrisies by developed countries, and then it has also highlighted greenwashing कि बहुत सारे companies जो हैं, they have not reduced their fossil fuel consumption. What they do is they offset their emission by buying renewable energy certificate or by buying something else, by some project somewhere else in the world. And all of that is an example of greenwashing. Greenwashing का मतलब ये होता है कि आप कुछ promise कर रहे हो, something environment friendly, but वो है नहीं environment friendly. A closer scrutiny will tell us that it's not that environment friendly. So survey highlights such type of challenges developed nations have faced. And because of that, it goes on to elaborate that what type of challenges India is going to face. And then thinking about those challenges, we should think about what will be our future. कि हमारा future energy scenario क्या होना चाहिए. ये आप blind bet on renewable energy, that may not be a good solution. So survey says Survey gives a data. I will remember this data, by the way. For examination, I will remember this data. कि हमारा 2023 में जो एनर्जी कंजम्पशन था, that was 16.7 gigajoule. एंड अगर हमको डेवलप्ड कंट्री बनना है बाय 2047, दैट इज आवर टारगेट. प्रधानमंत्री तो कह रहे हैं ना दैट वी आर गोइंग टू बिकम डेवलप्ड नेशन बाय 2047. तो अगर हमको बनना है डेवलप्ड कंट्री, देन वी नीड टू हैव एनर्जी कंजम्पशन ऑफ 45 to 75 gigajoule per year. तो वी नीड टू सिग्निफिकेंटली स्केल अप आवर एनर्जी कंजम्पशन. ओके, तो गैप बहुत ज़्यादा बड़ा है. रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी के बहुत सारे चैलेंजेस हैं. रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी फ्लक्चुएटिंग है, सोलर एंड विंड पर्टिकुलरली बहुत फ्लक्चुएटिंग है. दैट मेक्स योर ग्रिड अनस्टेबल. वी यूज अ वर्ड कॉल इंटरमिटेंट सप्लाई. आई विल रिमेंबर दिस एज अ की वर्ड इन मेंस आंसर राइटिंग. इंटरमिटेंट का मतलब ये है दैट आपका जो सप्लाई है डिमांड के हिसाब से आप नहीं बना सकते. दैट देयर विल ऑलवेज बी अ डिमांड सप्लाई मिसमैच. रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी सिस्टम्स के लिए सोलर पैनल्स बनाने के लिए बहुत सारे मिनरल्स चाहिए, क्रिटिकल मिनरल्स चाहिए. डू वी हैव दैट? Are we making enough semiconductors and other minerals so that we can make solar panels in the country? अब गवर्नमेंट के बहुत सारे स्कीम्स तो हैं, but the solar panel making capacity is very less in India. Do we have enough land which should not be very far away from population settlement? देखो ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है कि आपने एक सोलर प्लांट बड़ा सा आपने इंस्टॉल तो कर दिया, बट वो अगर बहुत दूर दराज हो, इट इज़ वेरी फार अवे फ्रॉम पॉपुलेशन सेटलमेंट, then when you distribute energy using power grid, there is going to be lot of losses. तो आपका जो power grid head should not suffer from lot of losses. So if you have a solar power plant, it shouldn't be very far away from population area. But do we have enough land which is unproductive land? Ideally that land should not be agricultural land. That it is unproductive land, also not very far away from population, so that you reduce your supply losses. Do we have that? And that's a huge challenge. Okay. Solar panel disposal, that's a challenge. सोलर पैनल का जो लाइफ है 20 से 25 साल होगा, मैक्सिमम 30 साल होगा. उसके बाद तो हमारा जो पूरा फोकस है सोलर पैनल पे, यस वी शुड फोकस ऑन दैट. So survey talks about the example of California. California started investing. California is the richest state in America. California started investing a lot into solar energy. Right now, one of the biggest problem they are facing here is that 30-40 years ago, all of the investment towards solar panel, and now how to dispose of all of the solar panel. So the survey talks about that, yes, even if we are investing towards solar energy, we should have a proper plan of action. That what are we going to do about all of this solar panel, which will keep on increasing year after year. कि आज जो solar panel है वो 25 साल बाद वो waste है, वो electronic waste है. So what are we going to do about how are you going to handle that particular solar panel? So survey goes on to highlight that these are the challenges we are going to face, and we know that our energy consumption is very high. Then survey talks about कि चलो ठीक है, एक जो solution है वो nuclear energy है, and I am a huge supporter of nuclear energy, by the way. I do think nuclear energy is also a very important theme for your examination, given the budget announcement of small modular reactor. पढ़ा होगा आपने budget के में, that there is focus on small modular reactor, overall focus on nuclear energy. But nuclear energy में भी कुछ challenges हैं. एक challenge हम सबको पता है, fear of nuclear energy. That what if nuclear reactor meltdown happens? Some disaster happen on your nuclear reactor. For example, what happened at Chernobyl in Ukraine in 1986. What happened at Fukushima in Japan? अब चलो Chernobyl, that was part of USSR, a corrupt authoritarian regime which did not want to accept its failure. वो फिर भी हम ले लें, चलो Chernobyl was a human-made error. But Japan तो बहुत ही responsible country है. Japan has some of the best engineers of the world. Fukushima happened because of a tsunami. तो natural disaster होगा तो अब क्या करोगे? Tsunami हो जाए तो अब क्या करोगे आप? So there is a fear associated with nuclear reactor. And because of that, there is a lot of opposition to nuclear energy. अब वो fear चाहे meltdown का हो, accidents का हो, nuclear waste management का हो, तो वो fear है. But there are some other challenges also which India faces. Nuclear energy का raw material क्या है? Uranium. Now we do have uranium but not enough. We are not blessed with uranium. So we are reliant a lot upon uranium supply from other countries. Now for uranium supply, there is a group called Nuclear Supplier Group, NSG, and India is not a member of Nuclear Supplier Group. India does have bilateral arrangement with many countries, but India even today is not a member of nuclear supplier group. Why? Because to become one, you need affirmation from all the member nation. Even one member can put a veto, and China always puts a veto on India's membership. But one unique point which I did not know, by the way, so this was something which this was interesting for me also, that एक जो बहुत paradoxical challenge है यूरेनियम में, वो ये है यूरेनियम एक्सट्रैक्शन के लिए, जो पर्टिकुलरली जो यूरेनियम प्यूरिफिकेशन है, जब आप यूरेनियम एक्सट्रैक्ट करते हो तो जो नेचुरल यूरेनियम है वो बहुत इंप्यूरिटीज हैं उसमें. आपका जो यूरेनियम ओर है उसमें बहुत सारे इंप्यूरिटीज हैं, तो आपको यूरेनियम ओर से यूरेनियम एक्सट्रैक्ट करना है. दैट विल लीड टू नेचुरल यूरेनियम. बट नेचुरल यूरेनियम में भी आपका दो आइसोटोप है यूरेनियम का, यूरेनियम 238, यूरेनियम 235. अब आप रिएक्टर में 235 यूज करते हो, 238 आप यूज नहीं करते हो. बट 235 कितना है? 0.7%. अगर आपके पास 100 ग्राम यूरेनियम है, देन आपके पास 99.3 ग्राम जो है यूरेनियम 238 है, राइट. सो फॉर particularly that in itself is a challenge. This process is called enrichment, how to increase the percentage of uranium 235. But particularly this part, you are trying to recover natural uranium from uranium ore. We are dependent a lot upon sulfuric acid. Sulfuric acid is a key chemical agent which plays a very important role in uranium extraction and purifying uranium from uranium ore. अब सल्फ्यूरिक एसिड का सबसे बड़ा सोर्स क्या है? सल्फ्यूरिक एसिड का सबसे बड़ा सोर्स जो है पेट्रोलियम रिफाइनिंग है. तो इफ कंट्रीज ट्रांजिशन अ लॉट, दे ट्रांजिशन टू सोलर, विंड फ्रॉम पेट्रोलियम, then it is going to reduce the supply of sulfuric acid, and it is going to create altogether a new set of challenges for nuclear energy, that आप uranium extraction नहीं कर पाओगे, your nuclear energy output is going to reduce. So I did not know this. For me this was something very interesting, that it's a paradoxical challenge, that आप energy transition करना चाह रहे हो by not burning fossil fuel, and option क्या है? या तो आप renewable energy पे जाओ, solar wind पे जाओ, उसके अपने set of challenges हैं, ग्रिड इंटीग्रेशन, इंस्टेबिलिटी, हाई कॉस्ट, एनर्जी स्टोरेज. दूसरा जो सोल्यूशन क्या है? न्यूक्लियर एनर्जी है. उसके ये तो चैलेंजेस हैं ही, बट एक और चैलेंज ये है दैट फॉर लो ग्रेड यूरेनियम एक्सट्रैक्शन यू नीड सल्फ्यूरिक एसिड, एंड सल्फ्यूरिक एसिड का जो सबसे बड़ा सोर्स है वो पेट्रोलियम इंडस्ट्री है, राइट. एंड देन द सर्वे कम्स टू द कंक्लूजन पार्ट ऑफ द चैप्टर, दैट हमारे पास एज ऑफ नाउ इंडिया जैसे नेशन पे कोल पावर प्लांट, कोल बेस्ड पावर प्लांट को शट डाउन करने का जो डिमांड है, दैट एवरी COP देयर विल बी लॉट ऑफ डिमांड फ्रॉम इंडिया दैट इंडिया शुड प्रॉमिस दैट बाय दिस ईयर यू आर गोइंग टू शट डाउन ऑल ऑफ योर कोल बेस्ड पावर प्लांट. इंडिया विल से दैट वी विल नॉट डू दैट. सो द सर्वे गोज ऑन टू से दैट देयर इज नो इकोनॉमिक जस्टिफिकेशन. इट डज नॉट मेक एनी सेंस दैट हमारे पास जो सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट रिलायबल सोर्स ऑफ एनर्जी है वो कोल है, and we have aspirations of becoming a developed country, and even if we start shutting down our coal based power plant, then what are we going to do? Nuclear has its own set of issues, it has its own set of fear. Solar, wind, we already have discussed the challenges of renewable energy. What are we going to do? So the survey goes on to say that we have to be very careful, right? Survey lauds some of the initiatives that to reduce emissions from coal-based plant. Some of the recent coal-based plants, they have used technologies like supercritical coal-based plant. I will remember these words. Ultra supercritical, advanced ultra supercritical. अब इसका meaning क्या है? I will explain that just in one line, and more than that is not required. I do expect a question on this topic in prelims also, that all of this technology, how it reduces emission of carbon dioxide. It reduces emission because such power plants operate at very high temperature. They particularly operate at above critical point of water. अब critical point of water क्या है? उसके लिए आपको water का phase diagram पता होना चाहिए. That water का जो melting and boiling point है, that depends upon not just temperature, it also depends upon pressure. Right? तो आपने triple point पढ़ा होगा. क्या triple point where water exists in all the three states together. It exists ice, water and water vapor, all three exist at one particular point, we call that triple point. Critical point is जहाँ पे water and gas के बीच का जो difference है वो आप distinguish नहीं कर सकते. It essentially is in one stage a fluid-like stage. That इसको distinguish करना बहुत मुश्किल है. That occurs at 374 degrees Celsius, pressure of more than 21.1 megapascal. ये आपको याद नहीं रखना है. Don't remember the figure. But remember that when you operate at this high temperature, one of the requirement is that आप water को steam में बदलते हो और steam से आप turbine चलाते हो. तो ये जो phase transition के लिए जो energy है, when you are converting that water into steam, lot of energy gets lost. And by operating at very high temperature, you are trying to reduce that loss. So the new coal-based power plant, which are called supercritical or ultra supercritical or advanced ultra supercritical, they operate at very high temperature, and as a result, they are more efficient. That by burning same amount of coal, they will produce more amount of energy. And hence, our overall emission from coal-based power plant, it has come down. And the survey says that shutdown तो हम नहीं कर सकते, but yes, we should upgrade our clean coal technology, and we already are doing that. We already have few units which are doing that. So I will remember this. I will remember this as a topic of technology and how it increases. Just remember that these power plants, they operate at very high temperature, above critical temperature, above critical point of the water, and by doing that, they become more energy efficient. Same amount of coal, but more amount of energy production. They reduce the loss of energy. Particularly, they reduce the loss of energy in phase transition. When liquid water converts into steam, they reduce loss of energy in this particular juncture, and they become more energy efficient. So India is already upgrading its own existing power plants. ये मैं याद रखूंगा. ये जो चार्ट है, ये मैं याद रखूंगा. ये 2024 का डेटा है, 30 नवंबर 2024 का डेटा है. that हमारा जो एनर्जी कंजम्पशन है वो अभी जो हमारा इंस्टॉल्ड कैपेसिटी है कौन कौन से सोर्सेज से आ रहा है. 46.2% is coming from coal, and then lignite also. So if I add lignite, that is 1.4%. So almost 49%, 48% is coming from coal plus lignite, which was 50% just in 2023. In 2024, it is 48%. So we already have reduced our coal-based dependence by 2%. हमारा जो installed capacity है. Solar is 20.6%, wind is 10.5%, hydro is 10.3%, other renewable energy sources 3.5%, nuclear is 1.8%. Nuclear बहुत कम है. यहाँ पे हमारे पास बहुत सारा scope है. अभी हमने फ्रांस का एग्जाम्पल देखा, 35% फ्रॉम न्यूक्लियर. सो यहाँ पे हमारे पास बहुत सारा स्कोप है बढ़ाने का, राइट. सो आई विल रिमेंबर दिस नॉट बिकॉज यूपीएससी विल आस्क क्वेश्चंस इन प्रीलिम्स, बट इफ देयर इज अ क्वेश्चन ऑन एनर्जी in mains examination, then I will remember this percentage distribution, and I will particularly remember how much from solar, how much from coal. This part I will remember. Okay. So this is one data point which I expect you to remember for mains examination. Then it goes on to talk about many government schemes. Pradhan Mantri Janjati Adivasi Nyay Mahabhiyan, Janman scheme. Janman scheme, and Janman scheme has been further now upgraded, and now we are calling it Janman Da Jogua scheme. This is being implemented by Ministry of Tribal Affairs. The goal is, the original scheme, Janman scheme, was available for particularly vulnerable tribal groups, that providing solar panel at very subsidized rate. But now, as of now, it is not only limited to PVTGs, it is limited to all tribes of the country. So a dedicated solar panel initiative for scheduled tribes of the country. I will remember that. PM Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana, this entire focus on installing solar panel at subsidized rate. Viability gap funding, this type of funding happens when, if let's say private companies are fearful that the cost of investment is very high and they're not very sure about the return. Then government एक time support देती है उनको. That one time support often comes into lucrative loan, very low rate. आप आराम से उसको वापस देते रहना. So such type of scheme, when government provides one-time support for some manufacturing, then we call those schemes viability gap funding. So for ultra solar power projects, solar park, You have viability gap funding. Green energy corridor. We are trying to upgrade our existing power grids so that the supply of renewable energy increases. National bioenergy program to focus on biofuels. Solar park, ultra mega solar projects. PM Kusum. PM Kusum Yojana is a scheme for farmers. That farmers, when they pump groundwater, rather than burning diesel in motors, they use solar panel. So, use of solar panel for irrigating your field. That is the objective of PM Kusum for farmers. Production link incentive, which is for many type of manufacturing, including solar panel manufacturing. National Green Hydrogen Mission, that's altogether a separate mission, but green hydrogen is when you are doing electrolysis, that आप H2O से so when hydrogen burns, it produces water vapor. That's an exothermic reaction. But the opposite is endothermic reaction. This reaction is called electrolysis. You supply electric current to water and you accumulate hydrogen and oxygen at two different electrodes. But you need energy. So hydrogen is a very good fuel, but hydrogen is not available in atmosphere. You need to extract hydrogen. One way to do that is from water. But this is an energy intensive process. And if you use solar energy or wind energy or any other renewable energy source for this particular process, we call this green hydrogen. So India wants to change its entire energy scenario that traditionally हम देखो क्या खरीदते रहे हैं अभी तक. Why don't we become a supplier? That as many countries transition to hydrogen as a source of energy, then let's become a green hydrogen producer country. Not only we should be able to fulfill our own requirement, but we should also be able to supply green hydrogen to other countries. Grid connected solar photovoltaic power project, including many PSUs. It goes on to talk about many initiatives taken by Government of India. It does say that ठीक है हमारा जो target है net zero target by 2070. To achieve this target, what are the areas we need to focus upon? We need to focus upon battery storage solution, grid infrastructure improvement, access to critical mineral for renewable energy, चाहे वो solar हो, wind हो, बाकी जो भी renewable energy sources हो. And then it goes on to talk about many other government schemes. There is a scheme by SEBI, that SEBI wants to make companies more responsible from the perspective of environment or society. So there is this scheme called Business Responsibility and Sustainability, National Guidelines on Responsible Business Conduct, where companies are measured or their performance is measured on all of these parameters. कि आपका greenhouse gas emission कितना है, water energy footprint कितना है, आप circular economy कितना आपने adopt किया है. If you want to remember this, you can remember. बाकी सारे schemes हैं. The survey talks about multiple other schemes that to increase investment in such projects, energy efficient projects or renewable energy projects or overall environment friendly projects, SEBI has also announced a debt security framework, that a lot of green bonds, but we have now used terms like transition bond to finance industries shifting to sustainable operation as per India's climate goal. Blue bonds focus on water management. Yellow bonds, solar energy projects. Circular economy bonds support sustainable waste management and resource efficiency. So SEBI has announced multiple type of debt securities that those companies who want to generate money from market, debt, using debt instrument, not as equity, using debt instrument, then they can issue these bonds, and these bonds will be available to investor and investors at some sort of lucrative rate of return. So the focus here is that we want more amount of money in energy efficient solution, in renewable energy solution, overall in environment friendly solution. So many initiatives are being taken to promote these things. Then survey, I will come to the NDC target in a moment. Survey lauds this initiative which was announced at COP26, Lifestyle for Environment or Life Mission. This was announced by India at COP26. The focus here is that for many of the environmental challenges, we need to generate awareness at the grassroots level. That when we collectively work together as a society, then uska jo impact hai, that is much, much more than the impact of individual actions, right? So, life's mission जो है, it has multiple focus कि हमारा जो consumption है वो हम कम करें, हमारा जो resource footprint है वो हम कम करें. We try to become more energy efficient in our day-to-day life. We try to conserve water in our day-to-day life. हम जो products use करते हैं उसका end of life disposal का हम खुद से ख्याल रखें. So all of this, a grassroots movement which aims towards sustainable development. This was announced by India at COP26 and we call this Life Mission, and survey lauds this. It talks about power of collective action. And finally, it provides some way forward. Now we are at the end of the discussion of this particular chapter. It talks about that UNEP का जो emission gap report 2020 था, it talked about some of the strategies कि आपको जो transition करना है towards a low carbon economy, कि आपका carbon footprint कम हो, तो आप क्या कर सकते हो? You can give tax break for electric vehicles because a lot of automobile industry has a very high carbon footprint, and subsidies for renewable energy adoption. And then it goes on to talk about, again, other initiatives taken by Government of India regarding this. So many market-based incentive, such as high excise duty on fossil fuel. Think of coal cess. कि coal cess जो है, जो extra tax आपको pay करना है burning of. So I can think of this as a carbon tax to discourage consumption based on fossil fuel. And simultaneously, subsidies for electric vehicles or perform achieve trade scheme. This is a very famous scheme to improve energy efficiency. Eco-mark scheme, which certifies eco-friendly products. So as a conscious consumer, if you're buying an eco-marks, this labeled product, then you know that this product is more environment friendly compared to other. Star labeling scheme, बहुत सारे जो electronic components आप खरीदते हो, 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, तो जो 5 star objects हैं, जो 5 star AC है, वो ज़्यादा energy efficient है, that it is going to consume less energy. Go electric campaign, focus on electromobility and energy efficiency. So focus on public transport expansion. So many initiatives have been taken by Government of India, which aims to reduce our footprint and which aims to ensure that we transition towards a low carbon economy. Green credit program, I will remember this. This is a very important program. इसका मतलब आपके पास प्रोडक्ट्स अवेलेबल नहीं है जो इको मार्क वाले हैं. बहुत सारे प्रोडक्ट्स में इको मार्क है. आई हैव सीन इको मार्क बेस्ड प्रोडक्ट्स. इको मार्क अपना प्रॉपर एक लोगो होता है, आप सर्च करना. इको मार्क अपना प्रॉपर एक लोगो है, एंड वो लोगो और वो अगर आपको दिखता है, और उसका सर्टिफिकेशन मैकेनिज्म भी अलग है कंपेयर टू लेट्स से ISI सर्टिफिकेशन, अदर सर्टिफिकेशन. वो अगर लोगो आपको दिख जाए, इट मीन्स इट हैज़ इको मार्क. सो कुछ प्रोडक्ट्स में दिख जाएगा आपको. ठीक है, सिंपल सा गूगल सर्च करो, आपको इमेजेस में जाना दिख जाएगा आपको. I will remember this. Green credit program is an important topic. I will remember this for both prelims and mains examination. एक जो हमारा focus है, that we want to increase our tree cover and forest cover, overall our green cover. So, Government of India announced this green credit program, under which, as individual or as organization can be NGOs or even private companies, or even individual, that if you are investing, आपने एक पैच ऑफ लैंड पे मान लो आपने प्लांटेशन किया, ट्री लगाया, या बहुत सारे स्कीम, बहुत सारे ऐसे इनिशिएटिव्स हैं. इट्स नॉट लिमिटेड टू ओनली प्लांटिंग ट्री, इवन रेन वाटर हार्वेस्टिंग और मैनी अदर स्कीम्स. देन गवर्नमेंट इज गोइंग टू गिव यू अ फाइनेंशियल सपोर्ट फॉर दैट. तो दिस स्कीम, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया अनाउंस्ड ग्रीन क्रेडिट प्रोग्राम. अंडर ग्रीन क्रेडिट रूल्स, green credits are issued for activities such as voluntary tree plantation on degraded land. And the main focus is that it does not have to be some large companies. It can also be local public at large. So there is a proper procedure here. आपका अगर कोई project है जो आपने as a conscious person also, If you want to start a project, then you can register that project and it will be financially supported. And you will be financially rewarded for this project. So this is a very important scheme I will remember. Then this एक पेड़ पा के नाम माँ के नाम, ये सारे जो इमोशनल वाले जो स्कीम्स हैं ये भी अनाउंस किया था गवर्नमेंट ने. फोकस ऑन सर्कुलर इकॉनमी. सर्कुलर इकॉनमी का मतलब होता है कि आप कोई भी वेस्ट मत करो. आप कोई भी चीज़ वेस्ट नहीं करोगे. यू विल ट्राई टू रिसाइकल, रीयूज, रिसाइकल थिंग्स. इनफैक्ट इट्स नॉट लिमिटेड टू रीयूज एंड रिसाइकल. इट इज़ ऑल्सो रीडिज़ाइनिंग ऑफ द प्रोडक्ट. कि आप प्रोडक्ट बनाने वक्त ही इस चीज़ का ख्याल रखोगे दैट इसका रिसाइकल और रीयूज करना आसान हो. And at every juncture, you will try to reduce your footprint. Government has announced this framework called Extended Producer Responsibility Framework. This is to tackle waste management problems, particularly plastic waste and electronic waste. That जो producers हैं, it is their responsibility to manage waste at the end of the life. We have announced plastic waste rules, electronic waste rule, Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, नेशनल क्लीन एयर प्रोग्राम. सारे जितने भी गवर्नमेंट स्कीम्स हैं वो बस सर्वे ने मेंशन कर रखा है कि ऑल ऑफ दिस आर स्कीम्स टेकन बाय गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया टू बिकम मोर सस्टेनेबल. Survey talks about that yes, we need to transition to low carbon development. We need to ensure energy security, job creation, economic growth, environmental sustainability. And that will require everything now coming down as an end, that yes, we need to invest a lot in mitigation, that goes without saying, by expanding renewable energy capacity, energy efficiency, energy storage. But we also need to invest a lot into adaptation. That will include investing in resilient infrastructure, research and development in climate technology, mobilizing climate finance, and implementing region-specific adaptation strategies. So these are some of the end points: investing in battery storage, carbon capture, utilization and storage, climate resilience in agriculture, rejuvenating water bodies, जो भी degradation of water bodies हैं, how to improve that, improving sustainable farming practices. These are some of the way forward at the end of the survey, which is provided. One more thing, I will go back to this slide here. Yeah. As I was saying earlier, that Paris Agreement, under Paris Agreement, all countries, they have to provide their targets. Those targets are called nationally determined contribution. And countries are supposed to update those targets every 5 years. So India recently updated its target, and I want you to know about only 3 of them, not all of them. I mentioned 8, but 3 of these targets are quantitative targets, and I will remember that quantitative part. The first quantitative target is this: to reduce emission intensity of its GDP by 45% by 2030 from 2005 level. Second, to achieve 50% cumulative electric power installed capacity from non-fossil fuel based sources by 2030. And third, to create a carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion ton through additional forest and tree cover. So third is very simple, that we want to increase our tree cover and forest cover so that more and more CO2 can be sequestered back to ground. Second is also very simple, कि अभी जो हमारा energy basket है, by 2030 we want this energy basket that 50% should be from non-fossil fuel sources. That will include nuclear, and that will include hydro and all other renewable energy sources. Let me explain this only. To reduce emission intensity of its GDP by 45%. That simply means that as our GDP increases, let's say if our GDP increases by 50% in next 10 years, that abhi hamara GDP 100 rupees hai, 10 years down the line it becomes 150 rupees, right? Right now हमारा जो carbon emission था, मान लो 10 kg था, कि इस साल हमने 10 kg emit किया, तो 10 साल बाद हमारा emission 15 kg नहीं होगा, हमारा emission 12 kg होगा, या हमारा emission 13 kg होगा. So our emission will not increase in the same proportion as our growth in GDP. So this is called reduction in emission intensity. इसको measure करने का तरीका बहुत simple है. आप टोटल कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड इमिशन लिखो और उसको जीडीपी से डिवाइड करो, दैट बिकम्स इमिशन पर जीडीपी यूनिट, जो भी है पर रुपी. जैसे मान लो कि 2025 में इन 2025, for simplicity, let's assume that our GDP is 100 rupees and our emission is 100 kg for simplicity. तो हमारा पर कैपिटा इमिशन अभी क्या है? 1 rupee per kg, right? I am making up these figures for only simplicity. And by 2030, let's say that we grow every year by 8%. That is what our wish is. Let's say we grow every year by 8%, and let's say that we go to some value. Let's say we grow by 150 rupee. But then our carbon dioxide emission will not be 100 kg. This carbon dioxide emission will be, that will not be 150 kg. It will be, let's say, 120 kg or 130 kg. Right? तो यहाँ पे मैंने GDP को न्यूमरेटर में लिया था, but I should have taken that in denominator. So it should be, let me in fact revise the calculation. 100 kg by 100 rupee, ये हमारा 2025 का डेटा है. This is 1. And then 120 kg by 150 rupees. That 5 years down the line, our GDP grew by 50%, but our CO2 emission only grew by 20%. So अब ये value आप देख लो, right? So this becomes 3/4. अब 1 से 3/4 कितना कम है? That will be our reduction in emission intensity. So that is our goal. So our focus is that as a developing nation, of course, our economy is going to grow, and it also means that our CO2 footprint will grow, but it will not grow in the same proportion. We will keep reducing our CO2 emission. And our goal here is that by 2070, we become carbon neutral, which essentially means that the amount of CO2 we are emitting, we are also capturing same amount of CO2. So our net emission becomes 0. That is our larger goal. And for that larger goal, we have to think strategically. We do not have to take initiatives just because other countries are putting a lot of pressure that India should switch off, shut down all of its thermal power plant. We must, by the way, we must in the course of time. As a responsible nation, we must, but not because we are being pressurized into it. We have multiple requirements, and it shouldn't be just one single-minded approach towards shutting down thermal power plant. We have multiple economic necessities, taking into account of all of those factors. And then we need to gradually transition to a low carbon economy. That is the main conclusion of this particular chapter, right? So this is the first chapter which I had to discuss. If you have questions here, you can ask questions. अब इसमें तो अलग, एक तो सबसे सिंपल सा तरीका ये हो सकता है. Your question has two parts. First is ways to capture carbon dioxide emission or CO2 emission. So all the natural processes through CO2 is captured. आप उसको improve कर सकते हो. So one way CO2 is captured is when biomass improves, when trees increase, plants increase. Plants क्या करते हैं? They do photosynthesis. They capture CO2 from the atmosphere and they convert that into biomass. So if you increase your tree cover and forest cover, overall if you increase plant growth, then you are capturing CO2. It's a natural process, okay? A lot of CO2 also is captured by oceans, and that is captured mostly by photosynthesis, which happens in ocean. And photosynthesis in ocean happens because of microscopic algae. Most of that happens because of microscopic algae called phytoplanktons. तो आप ये भी कर सकते हो, phytoplanktons के growth को improve कर सकते हो. वो आप कैसे करोगे? There are certain type of nutrients such as iron or phosphorus which can lead to growth of phytoplanktons in the ocean. Third तरीका जो है ocean जो capture करता है carbon dioxide को, that ocean captures carbon dioxide through shell formation. अब shell formation क्या है कि बहुत सारे जो aquatic organisms हैं उनका देखा होगा आपने, एक shell होता है. That shell is calcium carbonate. So calcium carbonate is stored, and as those organisms die, they get deposited at the bottom. Now that carbon remains in the bottom of ocean for hundreds and thousands of years, a natural process. One of the problem of shell formation is that ocean water is becoming more and more acidic, that the pH value of ocean is decreasing. तो हम क्या करेंगे, हम alkaline material डाल सकते हैं ocean में ताकि ocean का हम alkalinity improve करें, so that more and more shell formation can happen and more carbon gets captured by ocean. तो एक जो immediate तरीका ये है that all the natural ways through which carbon gets captured, let's escalate those things. Okay. But other things are also proposed. Thermal power plant emits a lot of carbon dioxide. Then capturing that carbon dioxide, transporting it through pipelines, through trucks, and storing it into geological reservoirs, such as, let's say there is a deep mine which has been abandoned, pumping that deep into ocean, right? Or salt cave, which we are not using it for any type of water. So finding suitable geological location and pumping CO2 at very high pressure around those places. But this part is very expensive. That first extracting carbon dioxide from power plants and from other sources, transporting it, pumping it at very high pressure, ये कहना आसान है, करना बहुत मुश्किल है. So there are multiple things which can be taken towards carbon capture and storage. And one common theme across all of them, particularly the industrial processes, that they're expensive. What is not expensive is all the natural processes through carbon gets captured. Let's escalate those natural processes. Let's improve our mangrove cover. Let's improve our tree cover, forest cover. Let's grow algae. So all of those things can help you with very less investment. We can work towards that. Yes. Yeah.
But the theme of those tariffs is based on that our industry is not meeting climate requirements. So if we are planning development on common but differentiated goals, then how those tariffs? Because we are investing already in improvement of climate.
Okay.
That is not to counter those tariffs.
Okay. Is it enough? पहले तो उसको स्टडी चाहिए. क्वेश्चन आपका बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन है. इनका क्वेश्चन ये है, यू आर टॉकिंग अबाउट कार्बन बॉर्डर एडजस्टमेंट मैकेनिज्म, राइट? ओके. यूरोपियन यूनियन recently announced that our laws are very tough on our own industries. We are asking a lot from our companies that they have to reduce their carbon emission, right? So for that they have to invest into renewable energy, energy efficiency, which is expensive, which makes car manufacturing expensive, which makes the product expensive, and consumers may prefer then cheaper things from those countries who give lot of relaxation towards carbon emission. For example, let's say India and China, that these countries are not that tough on carbon emission, so manufacturing is very cheap, import becomes cheaper, so our domestic industry suffers because of that. This is the argument European Union gives, that why should European Union impose carbon border adjustment tax, so that their domestic industries become competitive enough that they can match, and in a way they are also trying to punish those countries who are emitting more and more carbon dioxide. ये European Union का argument होगा. India का argument यहाँ में बहुत simple होगा, that you benefited, European Union and England, and they have benefited particularly through colonization. You emitted a lot of carbon dioxide. So when Kyoto Protocol is another very famous agreement which as of now is not in force. When Kyoto Protocol was announced, a carbon budget was announced for the countries. कितना carbon आप carbon dioxide emit आप कर सकते हो. India is well behind that carbon budget. तो हमारे जो भी legal obligations हैं at the global level, we are fulfilling that. We are within our target, and lot of people, in fact many experts, they say that how this is a case of neo-colonialism. That आप क्या कर रहे हो, आप फिर क्या इंडियन कंपनीज को फोर्स कर रहे हो कि दे बाई टेक्नोलॉजीज का पेटेंट किसके पास है? यूरोपियन कंपनीज के पास है. सो दे स्टिल आर ट्राइंग टू फाइंड वेज टू एक्सप्लॉयट रिसोर्सेज फ्रॉम डेवलपिंग नेशंस, राइट? सो सेम चीज़ को देखने का दो लेंस है. अब वो आप पे डिपेंड करता है कि आप उसको कैसे देखोगे. जैसे अगर मुझे इंडियन स्टैंड को जस्टिफाई करना हो, वाई इंडिया शुड अपोज दिस, वाई इंडिया शुड अपोज कार्बन बॉर्डर adjustment mechanism based on the concept of common but differentiated responsibility and respective capabilities. That is our main argument, that why should we oppose this particular tariff measure announced by European Union, right? Hopefully, we do reduce our carbon emission, but it is not going to be easy. It is not going to be easy. Any other question? Yes. Yeah, perfect. That's a fantastic question. That's altogether a separate discussion about electric vehicles itself, which I wanted to avoid. But since you are asking this question, it should be very clear that electric vehicle is not a panacea. The way we think of electric vehicle, that it is going to solve multiple problems. It depends upon what is the energy source to charge that battery, right? Air pollution आप immediately solve कर सकते हो. एयर पोल्यूशन को आप आउटसोर्स कर रहे हो, सॉल्व तो नहीं कर रहे हो आप. कि दिल्ली में मान लो सब लोगों के पास इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल आ गया. लेट्स एज्यूम दैट दिल्ली में चार्जिंग इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर इतना है दैट इट इज वर्किंग वेल. देन ऑल ऑफ द पीपल आर चार्जिंग देयर बैटरीज. दैट चार्जिंग रिक्वायर्स इलेक्ट्रिसिटी. दैट इलेक्ट्रिसिटी इज बीइंग प्रोड्यूस्ड फ्रॉम व्हाट सोर्स, दैट विल डिसाइड द environment friendliness of the electric vehicle. So if you are still producing a lot of electricity by burning coal, that's not a solution. You have simply outsourced air pollution to some other place. Rather than to urban area, maybe some area not located in the NCR region. But you have not solved your carbon problem, carbon dioxide problem. That you still are emitting, maybe to the same level, right? So electric vehicle, but it does give you a solution in the sense that you can always improve the contribution of renewable energy to your power grids. कि आपका पावर ग्रिड में जो अमाउंट ऑफ कंट्रीब्यूशन है वो बढ़ता चला जाए, एंड वो ग्रेजुअली इंप्रूव हो भी रहा है. अभी हमने देखा साल भर का डेटा है, 2% हमारा कोल का जो डिपेंडेंस है वो कम हुआ है इंस्टॉल्ड कैपेसिटी में. अच्छा, बाय द वे आई शुड बी वेरी क्लियर अबाउट वन थिंग, कि हमने जो ये एक पाई चार्ट जो देखा था कि कोल से हम 48% हमारा इंस्टॉल्ड कैपेसिटी कोल से 48% है, वो इंस्टॉल्ड कैपेसिटी है. अगर हम एनर्जी कंजम्पशन की बात करें तो कोल का अभी भी कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशन 65% to 70% है. इट शुड बी वेरी क्लियर. But nonetheless, it is gradually coming down. So the benefit of electric vehicle is that gradually the contribution of fossil fuel based sources to electricity production will come down. And because of that, the footprint of automobile sector will come down. But if everybody uses diesel and petrol, वो तो कभी नहीं होगा. फिर तो कम होने का कोई सवाल ही नहीं है ना, आप डीजल पेट्रोल कर रहे हो. इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल में फिर भी एक ऑप्शन है कि ये कम हो सकता है. ऑटोमोबाइल सेक्टर का जो कार्बन फुटप्रिंट है, इट कैन ग्रेजुअली रिड्यूस. एनी अदर क्वेश्चन? Can we take a break? Okay, let's take a break. The next chapter is very simple. The first chapter was multiple things were given, multiple schemes were given. The next chapter is more analysis is there rather than government schemes, like plethora of government schemes. More analysis is there. And the analysis is important. And the topic in itself is very important. We're going to discuss that after the break.
Does your current affairs preparation feel unorganized and scattered? Vision IA's digital current affairs platform brings everything you need under one roof. Whether you are starting with the basics or looking to refine your preparation, Vision IA's digital current affairs premium features include Vision Intelligence. Get AI-driven responses to your current affairs questions, instant, syllabus-aligned and precise. Daily answer writing. Enhance your mains preparation with structured answer writing and expert feedback. Quick notes and highlights. Streamline your note-taking and create personalized revision materials for easy reference. And free features include daily news summaries. Stay updated with curated insights from trusted sources like The Hindu and Indian Express, saving you valuable time. Downloadable PDFs. Organize study materials efficiently for seamless revision. Daily quizzes. Sharpen your knowledge with MCQs that track your progress and reinforce learning. Student dashboard. Keep your preparation on track with a performance monitoring system. Visit our website to explore the features and get started today.
Do not let lack of guidance come in the way of your success in the UPSC Civil Services examination. Opt for the dedicated solution to optimize your true potential. and turn your competencies into a benchmark of victory in the UPSC Prelims and Mains with the Laksha Mentoring Program 2025. Starting from coverage of the syllabus to time management, practice through test series, personalized feedback, and performance assessment, the program boosts your confidence to tackle the exams head-on. Enroll for the Laksha Prelims Mentoring Program 2025 starting from 11th February and the Laksha Integrated Mentoring Program for Prelims and Mains 2025 starting from 12th February, and navigate your journey with strategic revision, practice, and mentoring. Prelims is knocking at your doorstep. Are you ready to conquer it heads-on? Do not let the paucity of time determine your success in UPSC Prelims 2025. Fast-pace your preparation with the fast-track course offering coverage of syllabus ranging from polity, economy, geography, environment, international relations, science and technology, art and culture, and Indian history. Starting fresh or looking for revision guidance, Fast Track course has got you covered. Enroll for coverage of GS Prelims syllabus, personalized mentoring, current affairs preparation, sectional mini tests, access to live and online classes. Admission to the course is now open.
The last chapter of economic survey is labor in the AI era, crisis or catalyst. This chapter essentially, let me again briefly summarize this chapter. The main part of this chapter is that AI has the potential to cause a lot of disruption in the labor market right now, particularly for India, which is witnessing demographic dividend, that a larger section of population is very young, unemployable population. And in this juncture, at this juncture of time, machines are becoming more and more intelligent, which is going to cause more and more automation. So what should we do then? What type of impact it will have? And are we placed well enough? If there are opportunities, are we placed well enough to utilize that opportunity? But is there an opportunity? That in itself is a question. So this chapter talks about the possible impact of AI, particularly on the employment scenario. It also talks about some other general challenges associated with artificial intelligence. And then in the end, it talks about that apart from challenges, what type of, how it can be utilized also. Like in some way it can be beneficial also, but we should be very clear about how it can benefit us. Okay, so this is the main crux of the chapter, hence the name, that is it a crisis or catalyst, particularly for the employability of young population. I really thought of an essay which was asked by UPSC a few years ago. Rise of AI, the threat of jobless future, or better job opportunities through reskilling and upskilling. This was an essay asked by UPSC, and I don't see that why this essay cannot be again asked by UPSC. This was asked, I think, in 2019 or 2020. And I do think that similar type of essay can be asked in futures also. Anyways, few things first. Same what we did in the last chapter, that we should be aware about certain keywords. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, generative AI, large language models, and automation. These are some of the words we should aware about before we jump into this chapter. Artificial intelligence simply means when machines start mimicking human level intelligence, that generally for certain type of problems which requires human level intelligence. And if machines are capable of doing that, even in some limited domain, it does not have to be all of the domains of human intelligence. By the way, no machine is capable of doing that. But even in very limited domain, if machines start mimicking human level intelligence, then we can call it artificial intelligence. It's not a new idea. The idea has been there. In fact, there are some science fiction authors who talked about this as early as 1940s. Some work happened in 1970, 1990, a lot of work happened. But the recent advancements in computing, in graphic processing units, in making very small chips with very high capacity, and most importantly, the availability of data. All of that has played a very important role, that the current advancements in artificial intelligence, that is remarkable. And there has been a revolution in last 3-4 years. That some progress was happening in 2020. I have been like tracking this for last 15-20 years now. And some progress was happening in 2020, 2010s also. But then in this decade, there is a sudden transition and there is a great revolution which is happening right now. And in this great revolution, a lot of traditional way of thinking about economy and employment, it is going to get disrupted. The same way how this disruption has happened in the past, it is going to happen due to AI this time. In past, it was simple machines. They were not intelligent machines, but machines who took away some of the jobs. What type of disruption it happened in the past? We're going to talk about that also. And then based on that, can we anticipate what type of disruption is going to happen right now? Will it be good or will it be bad for our nation? One of the most important tool of artificial intelligence is machine learning. You can think of machine learning, if you want to imagine machine learning in very simple terms, you can think of this as a computer program whose output is dependent upon how much data it has been trained upon. That's the most important part. When you write a computer program, then computer program, what does a computer do? I often ask this question, what does a computer do? Computer takes input, computer processes information, stores data, gives you output. Right, so computer program does that. That it takes input from you. You have written set of instructions, which we call coding. You have written few line of codes, set of instructions. And based on those so a computer is going to follow those set of instructions. And based on that, it is going to give you an output. Okay? But you have written those set of instructions. If you had tried to do those set of instructions by yourself on a piece of paper, then it will take a lot of time. Computers, because they essentially rely upon movement of electrons, and electrons move really fast. Movement of electrons, they perform all of those set of instructions in a very short span of time. And because of that, computer can solve a complex calculation in a very short span of time. But machine learning algorithm is not like a typical computer program. Machine learning algorithm fundamental difference is that its output, it is particularly trained for some reasoning purpose. And its output is dependent upon how much of data it has been trained upon. Let's say you design a machine learning program which has to identify by looking at a picture, that is this picture of a boy or a girl, right? Or any gender you want to associate with, right? So let's say you want to develop a machine learning program for that. Now a typical computer program will look at certain features. It will follow a set of instructions. Based on that, it will give you an output. If a picture does not fit into set of instructions, it is not going to, there is a very good chance it will give you wrong output. But a machine learning program will be first trained. It will be trained by showing multiple pictures of boys and girls. And it has its own way of analyzing the facial features, and based on that trying to come to some probabilistic output, that when after a lot of training, when you show this a new picture, a picture which was not part of its training data, and even then it is able to give you output that this is a picture of a boy or a girl, and it is giving this correct output most of the time. So machine learning program output is it learns based on the data it has been trained upon, rather than you deciding the output based on set of instructions. So this is the fundamental difference between a machine learning program, which is as of now one of the most important tool in artificial intelligence, and other type of computer programs. We essentially utilize lot of statistical tools, ideas of probability, statistics, linear algebra. It is a lot of maths. आप ऐसे समझ लो जो machine learning है, it is a lot of maths, that you have to be really good at maths to be really good at machine learning. Okay, and so some branches of maths particularly have a lot of utility here in machine learning. Within machine learning, there is a subset. This subset is called deep learning. And deep learning, by the way, is in news for altogether a different reason. Deep learning, for the first deep learning artificial neural network, Nobel Prize in Physics was given last year. That in itself is an important news which you should know. Deep learning का जो inspiration है, that was human brain. That human brain, how does you can think of human brain as a very powerful computer. Think about it. Human brain is a very powerful computer. It has all the features of a computer. The same way computer has input devices such as keyboards, such as this touch screen, such as an audio, a video, a mouse. All of these are input devices. Our body has input devices. Eye is an input device. Ears are input device. Our skin is an input device. Eyes as an input device gather light. Ears gather vibrations in air. Right? And then that input is processed by your brain and it gives you output. It allows me to see you. It allows you to listen to my voice. It allows you to feel that sensation of touch. Something can be hot or cold. All of that. So think about it. Your human brain is like a very powerful computer. It has input devices, it has output, it has storage. Few information you can store also in your brain. The reason it can do that, because your brain is a very complex organism, maybe the most complex system, definitely on planet Earth. It is the most complex system on the planet Earth. There should be no doubt about it. There are few billion specialized cells in your brain. These cells are called neurons. There are multiple structures of your brain responsible for different type of things. And this brain is directly connected to what we call central nervous system, which goes via your spinal cord. And that central nervous system is connected with other neurons spread all across your body, which is called peripheral nervous system, peripheral neural system. So your body essentially functions because of this neurological system. The main part of that neurological system, the fulcrum, is your brain, then your central nervous system, and then peripheral nervous system. And all of that system works because of these very specialized cells called neurons. Neurons have this very interesting structure. Neuron has a nucleus, yes. This has this thread-like structure which are called dendrites. Then there is a single thread called axon. Then another thread-like structure which is connected to the next neuron. When you collect information, when these neurons collect information, the processing starts from the first neuron itself. How neural connections are built, one neuron when it passes information to the next neuron, it is based on what is the strength of that neural connection. There are certain signaling molecules, as well as those are chemicals, but as well as there are electrical signals which are passed within, from one neuron to another neuron. It is a chemical signal, but within a neuron it is an electrical signal. So let's say when you memorize, when you read something again and again, think about it. When you read something again and again, your brain forms new neural connections and it forms memory as a function. You are able to memorize things when you read same thing again and again. It's a very flexible computer. You can train it. You can train it for multiple purposes. Like advancements in neuroscience allowed us to appreciate why people get addicted to few things, how good habit or bad habits are formed. So once you learn this, you can train this. You can train your brain to inculcate good habits or bad habits. I'm digressing a little bit here. The point I'm trying to make here is that human brain is a very complex structure. It consumes 20% of your energy. आपका जो energy consumption है, this small organ consumes 20% energy, and rest 80% is rest of your body. Few billion neuron cells are accumulated here, performing different type of functions, dependent upon rest of the neural system and the connection between those neurons. And data processing happens at each and every neuron. So if you are feeling pain, which part of brain will illuminate? That depends upon the neural connection. So neural connection, when it is formed, which neural connection will be formed? That happens through, again, some signaling molecules. So some scientists thought, let's try to replicate that into a computing system. We are going to design computer programs with multiple layers. And those layers are going to analyze data, and they will pass information to the next layer in form of probability. Rather than an electrical signal or chemical signal, they will pass this information in the form of probability. Data processing will happen at the next layer, which will further refine that data to next layer, and finally your final layer is going to give you some output. So you can think of deep learning as deep learning can be divided into three parts: an input layer, hidden layers, and output layer. Input layer where input is provided, hidden layer where this information is processed. Now, hidden layer is where data processing happens. Hidden layers have their own way of analyzing that कौन से पैरामीटर को कितना वेटेज देना है हमको. डेटा प्रोसेसिंग क्या होगा, किस पैरामीटर, जैसे मान लो एक सिंपल सा एग्जांपल ले लेते हैं. टेक अ रैंडम एग्जांपल. लेट्स टेक एन एग्जांपल ऑफ अ deep learning program which has to correctly identify fruits and vegetables. Your goal here is that the same way, for example, when you train a small child, आप बहुत सारे बुक्स मिलेंगे वहाँ पे बहुत सारे एप्पल्स के आपने फोटो दिखाए एक छोटे बच्चे को पता है कि एप्पल है. अब आपने हाथ से खराब सा ड्राइंग बनाया एप्पल का और पूछा कि कौन सा फ्रूट है, और बच्चे ने बता दिया कि हाँ ये तो एप्पल है. This is what we want to happen. That I want to train my program a lot of data, and based on that, as it has learned, based on that, when I provide some new data, it can apply that training data and it can give me the correct output. But the way it does and the way human brain does is very different. The only common is that, in fact, the only common is the term neural network. Human brain कैसे काम करता है वो अभी तक हमको ठीक से पता नहीं है. I should tell you that human brain का जो exact working है वो बहुत अभी तक clear नहीं है. But neural network का जो working है, some part of that is also not clear. That is called black box, which is a separate problem. But फिर भी we do know that they calculate probabilities. They essentially calculate probabilities and they give weightage to parameters. Some parameters will be given more weight compared to other parameters. Based on that, they are going to do probabilistic calculation. So let's say I have a program which has to identify fruits and vegetables. I have trained this program on a lot of data. I show a new data. Now this new picture, this program is going to divide into multiple pixels. Maybe it will assign weightage to those pixels. It will process information at the first layer, will assign some probability, what type of fruit or what type of vegetable it is. Second layer, more calculation. Third layer, more calculation. किस parameter को कितना weight देना है, that will be decided at each and every layer. And the final output layer maybe gives you weightage of, let's say, more than 90% that it is an apple, and that will be the final output. Right. So deep learning programs essentially do calculation about probability, and that probabilistic calculation is further and further refined as it passes through multiple layers, and then the output is going to give you hopefully correct output. Okay. But to train this, you need huge amount of data. And for what purpose you are making this deep learning program, you need data specific for that particular function. Okay. So we should know this also, that these terms, we should be very clear. AI is a bigger word. Sorry, I was looking for this picture. Machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence. Deep learning is further subset of machine learning, which particularly uses that neural network of human brain. That was the inspiration. That inspiration led to neural networks, and this essentially has all of the recent revolution which you are witnessing is due to artificial neural networks. And this was recognized by Nobel Prize last year. Nobel Prize in Physics was given for that. Okay. So we should know this also. Okay. Another domain of artificial intelligence, which is a direct consequence of artificial neural network or deep learning, same thing. I'm using two words, deep learning, artificial neural network, same thing, is generative AI. Generative AI means that it is capable of generating new data based on the data it has been trained upon. That it has been trained upon, let's say, to generate text. Then if you have a query, based on the keywords of the query, it can give you a coherent response, which will be grammatically correct, well structured. But even for that coherent response, it is doing trillions of probabilistic calculation. अब चैट जीपीटी सबने यूज करा है, चैट जीपीटी से आपने कोई क्वेश्चन पूछा, वो जो आंसर देगा, वो आंसर देने के लिए इट इज डूइंग फ्यू ट्रिलियंस ऑफ कैलकुलेशन, कि क्वेश्चन का रिक्वायरमेंट क्या है, उसके हिसाब से पहला वर्ड क्या होगा, नेक्स्ट क्या होगा, उसका नेक्स्ट क्या होगा, इसका स्ट्रक्चर क्या होगा. फॉर ईच एंड एवरीथिंग trillions of calculations happen. There are data servers which are capable of doing that, and they are going to give you a coherent response. But even what will be the next word, that will be decided via this probabilistic calculation which I mentioned, that every layer is essentially deciding that what is the best possible next word. So it's a probabilistic calculation which happens in deep learning programs. So generative AI is capable of generating content which can be text, it can be image, it can be music, it can be video also, it can be code, computer code, based on what your input response is. They have been trained upon data sets, and using that training data set, they can essentially generate new content. Within generative AI, we use a word large language models. ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, all of these are examples of large language models. They are capable of analyzing and understanding human-like text, and they are capable of generating human-like text. जिस तरीके से आप text generate करते हो, आप paper लिख सकते हो, English sentences form कर सकते हो, program which is able to do that. Right? So generative AI is a bigger word. Large language model can be thought of as a part of generative AI. And then the last word which we already know meaning of this word, automation. That as machines become more and more intelligent, there is a fear that some of the jobs will be replaced by machines. It is not the first time it is happening. It has happened in the past. In past, what type of changes happened? What type of changes may happen right now? This is this entire chapter all about. Okay, so automation is simply machines taking away human jobs. There are many domains of artificial intelligence. Natural language processing, Siri, OK Google, Alexa, Gemini, ChatGPT, all of these are examples of natural language processing, that they can understand human language. Computer vision, a domain of AI which can take visual input, that can be image, that can be video, and it can process that information and gives you some relevant information. It can be used, let's say, for autonomous car, that a self-driving car, as it drives, it is developing a map, a live map of its area, but then it has to correctly identify that this is a cat, this is a person, and that is a traffic signal. That will be done via computer vision. Or when security agencies do mass surveillance, कि आपको किसी terrorist का facial print पता है, और आप एक CCTV data आपके पास आया है, and in that CCTV data you are trying to essentially assign that is this person, is this image matches in any of the video feeds. So that will be example of application of computer vision. Robotics, robots when they become intelligent, equipped with sensors, they are capable of taking independent decision. When they become intelligent, we call it robotics. Expert systems, when AI starts becoming expert in domains like healthcare or law or financial services, that generally इन चीज़ों में अगर आप सोचो तो आपको experts चाहिए कि आपका disease देख के diagnosis करना कि आप from what disease you are suffering from, या एक legal opinion देना, या आपका एक कोई portfolio है कि आप कितना स्टॉक में डालना है, कितना गोल्ड डालना है, ये सजेशन देना. All of these require expertise. If an AI is capable of doing the same thing, we call it expert system. Okay. All of these are example of generative AI. Some examples. DeepSeek is a very famous example right now, an open source software. आपने पढ़ा होगा अभी. Chinese generative AI. Anyways, chalo, let's come to the main content of the chapter here. The chapter starts with some of the estimates. A lot of estimates are given. I will remember just one. There is a very good estimate given by International Labour Organization. This is a UN body, United Nations body है. ज़्यादा इसका credibility है. ILO estimates that 75 million jobs globally are at complete risk of automation due to artificial intelligence. बहुत सारा डेटा है, मैकेंजी का डेटा है, वर्ल्ड बैंक का डेटा है, 50 तरीके का डेटा है, आपको बिल्कुल याद नहीं रखना. एक कोई डेटा याद रखो, अगर क्वेश्चन आता है एआई ऑटोमेशन पे तो उसको बस ध्यान में रखना, ठीक है. द चैप्टर टॉक्स अबाउट दैट, जो कि मेन एक क्रक्स एंड में आता है, दैट हाउ एआई कैन मेक इकोनॉमी मोर प्रोडक्टिव. एंड ये एक मेन पार्ट ऑफ आगे इस पे डिटेल डिस्कशन है. बट दैट इज नॉट हाउ द चैप्टर स्टार्ट्स. It says that yes, it is one of the outcomes, possible outcome, but a very immediate outcome will be that a lot of people are going to lose their job. Think of some of the jobs in customer care, or think of many delivery jobs also. If intelligent drones start delivering goods, think of delivery jobs. Think of driverless cars leading to loss of jobs of drivers. In many domains, data entry jobs. These are the simplest jobs which are going to threatened due to artificial intelligence. So what the survey says, that many people may not benefit from the technological advancement which is going to happen due to artificial intelligence, and that can cause social disruption. And when social disruption due to unemployment happens, it leads to altogether other type of social problems, economic problems, and even security problems. We find that unemployment leads to mental health issues. We find that unemployment leads to political turmoil, political instability. We find that unemployment leads to widespread disappointment and alienation. Right? So it talks about that how this is a possibility that many people may lose their job, and that can have its own set of challenges. Survey in the starting itself highlights that India would have to create an average of 78 lakh jobs annually in the non-farm sector by 2030 to cater to the rising workforce. I'll remember this also as a key fact, that in non-farm sector we will have to generate 78.5 lakh jobs to cater to all the new people who are joining labor force. And one very important part of this chapter is that given the challenges on labor disruption which may happen, the survey talks about that we need to invest in institutions, social institutions, political institutions. And people already talk about two types of institution, ensuring institution and enabling institution. But survey says that we suggest one more, that is called stewarding institution. Let me explain meaning of all of that. Ensuring institution is for those people who are going to immediately lose their job. That people who are becoming unemployed due to automation, then there should be a social safety net for them. For example, let's say unemployment benefits, some sort of unemployment insurance program. A social safety net so that basic economic requirements, that does not malfunction, alienation in family does not happen. Right, so safety net for workers to maintain living standards, reduce inequalities and support economic stability. That we need institutions who are going to focus upon helping immediately to those people who are going to lose job due to automation, right? Hence we are calling it ensuring institution, some sort of insurance against automation, okay? Then second set of institutions, it says that we need enabling institutions. What do we mean by enabling institution? For example, we need to understand what are the skills which are going to remain relevant due to artificial intelligence. Although in the end it has a warning also, and I really loved that analysis. I will come to that in the end. But it talks about that we need to skill ourselves. We need to skill ourselves in the way that we remain relevant in the emerging market scenario. So we need skill development programs that includes reskilling and upskilling. Reskilling means that if it is required, you are learning new skills. And if it is required in the same domain where you are working, you have to upskill yourself, that you are further improving your skill. जैसे एक simple सा example ले लेते हैं. Coding is considered a skill job, but basic level of coding, already some level of coding is being done by AI. And आप अभी Sam Altman जो OpenAI के CEO हैं वो अब इंडिया में थे, उनका अगर आपने इंटरव्यू पढ़ा हो, so he made a statement that within 2 to 3 years, even medium level coding will be done by AI engineers, not by person. So even in some, generally, or think of how being a polyglot is considered a skill job, that if you can speak multiple languages, that's considered a skill. But no, that skill is also going to be not relevant that much because of all of that translation, AI translation which is available. आप live translation कर सकते हो audios को use करके, right? आपको ऐसा भी नहीं है कि पहले सुनना है. Everything can happen in live manner. So you need to reskill if your skill is not relevant, and you need to upskill in the same domain, but you need to learn new things. Okay? तो फिर आपको और improve होना पड़ेगा. There is always a chance कि हम सारे unnecessary हो जाएं, and then we have to invest towards universal basic income. एक जो इंश्योरिंग इंस्टीट्यूशन में है, इसी में एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट है जो आज से कुछ साल पहले एक इकोनॉमिक सर्वे ने सजेस्ट किया था, that India should think about universal basic income. कि अभी हम अलग अलग टाइप के सोशल सेफ्टी नेट्स हैं, सबको ख़त्म करो, एक स्कीम लेके आओ, यूनिवर्सल बेसिक इनकम, कि सबको एक मिनिमम इनकम सपोर्ट हम गवर्नमेंट दे. उसका सर्वे के हिसाब से उसके जो बेनिफिट्स ये होंगे कि अभी जो आप अलग अलग असेसमेंट करते हो कि किसको मनरेगा में काम दे, किसको BPL में ये दे, इसमें खर्चा लगता है. ये असेसमेंट करने में, इसको इम्प्लीमेंट करने में जो पैसा जाएगा वो तो खर्चा है ही, बट in the assessment itself you spend a lot of money. In ensuring that all of those institutions are there, you invest a lot of money. So in universal basic income, that everybody will be given a minimum level of support. And then people who do not want it, they can always say that we do not want to be part of this program. But government should allow a universal basic income. So a few years ago, this was one of the suggestions made by Economic Survey. Maybe in future, there is a very famous town hall by Elon Musk where he mentions that there is a very good chance that in future AI becomes so productive that we will not be required. That is always a fear. That is always a fear that all of the economic jobs which human beings are doing right now, AI is good at everything. सब घर पे बैठेंगे, रील बनाएंगे, ठीक है? So that is a possibility. Okay. Third, the survey suggests that we also need another set of institution called stewarding institution. इसका सिग्निफिकेंस ये है दैट एक फियर तरीके से अगर आप देखोगे, जैसे अगर आपने सोच लिया कि नहीं AI इज गोइंग टू कॉज लॉट ऑफ जॉब लॉस, देन बहुत सारे जो पोटेंशियल बेनिफिट्स हैं आप उससे आप हाथ धो बैठोगे. बट अब ब्लाइंड अगर ऑटोमेशन करो, दैट कैन ऑल्सो बी अ चैलेंज. सो वी नीड सम सॉर्ट ऑफ स्टेवर्डशिप, अ गार्डियन. स्टेवर्ड क्या होता है? एक गार्डियन इंस्टीट्यूशन. अ गार्डियन इंस्टीट्यूशन विच tries to create a balance between innovation and public welfare. कि AI ट्रांसपेरेंटली यूज़ हो, AI का जो बेनिफिट हो वो इक्विटेबल हो, और AI से रिलेटेड जो भी चैलेंजेस हैं, बायसेस हैं, आई एम गोइंग टू कम टू दो चैलेंजेस, ये हम सही से हैंडल कर पाएँ. सो सर्वे सजेस्ट दैट अपार्ट फ्रॉम insurance and apart from reskilling and upskilling for enabling institution, we also need steward institution, guardian institution. And this is where public sector along with companies and universities and think tanks and civil society, that all of the different stakeholders have to work together, right? Anyways, so this is one of the very important part of this chapter, that to handle these challenges, we need different types of institutions. इंडिया में एक हमेशा बहुत बड़ा प्रॉब्लम, इंस्टीट्यूशन पे फोकस इतना ज़रूरी है. अब जैसे when you grow you realize that why institutions matter a lot. हमारा जो एक ट्रेडिशनल अपब्रिंगिंग इस तरीके से हो रखा है, वो इन जनरल मेरे हिसाब से ह्यूमन इवोल्यूशन का प्रॉब्लम है, दैट वी इवॉल्व फ्रॉम स्मॉल ट्राइब्स वेयर देयर यूज्ड टू बी अ लीडर एंड पीपल लुक्ड अप टू द लीडर. So because of that, maybe वो evolutionary instinct है human being का, और इंडिया में तो कुछ ज़्यादा ही है, that we look for heroes. And heroes are problematic. Heroes look really good in films, but real life is not film. So when you look for heroes, that heroes will do something great, then there is always a chance that those heroes will go and some villains will come. And there is always a chance that those heroes will become villain. That is where institutions are very important. That it is a set of rules, it is a system which can handle even good people or bad people. That good people will make the system really good, of course, but even if bad people are there, institutions still will survive. That they will not be able to do a lot of damage. तो अगर आप everybody, जैसे for example, I remember as a kid when there was a good IPS officer in my district, people बहुत बड़ी IPS officer है, law and order control कर लिया है. But then many, एक दो बार ऐसे होगा, other IPS officer, there will be allegations that corruption, वहीं फिर bureaucrats, minister nexus, all of that. So why don't we create systems where it doesn't matter if you're honest bureaucrat or dishonest bureaucrat. You cannot do lot of corruption. You cannot do lot of dishonesty. That is why institutions are important. That we need strong institutions. Institutions who are not dependent upon the goodness and the greatness and even the badness of people. That they are dependent upon set of rules, accountability, checks and balances, rather than people, right? There is a very famous quote, blessed is the land which has a hero. And the reply is, cursed is the land which needs a hero. So if a land needs a hero, then that land is cursed clearly. So let's celebrate this very boring thing, institution, rather than celebrating people. I so much celebrate Ambedkar because of that. Ambedkar पढ़ा आपने? Ambedkar पढ़ना कभी? अगर political science के अगर आप student हो तो Ambedkar पढ़ना. Ambedkar ना वो थे. He was a वो भविष्यवाणी करते थे वो. And his भविष्यवाणीज are very correct. He says this, that the problem we as a nation face is hero worship. And this is going to cause a lot of damage. And that is why I find this very problematic that now people have made Ambedkar a god. And if Ambedkar would have lived today, he would have said, ki kya kar rahe ho tum ye? Right? So Ambedkar is perhaps the greatest thinker this country has produced. Modern India definitely, Ambedkar is one of the greatest thinkers, but at the same time, we should be very, very wary of hero worship. So survey, because of that, talks about significance of institutions, that how much they shape destiny of a society. And to tackle AI, it talks about creating these three types of institutions to tackle the problems related to artificial intelligence. And there are many problems which surveys goes on to highlight. Breakthrough and practicality. एक होता है कि आपने कुछ टेक्नोलॉजिकल ब्रेक थ्रू किया, राइट, बट उसका प्रैक्टिकल यूटिलिटी कितना है, दैट कैन बी अ प्रॉब्लम. एंड फॉर एग्जांपल लेट्स से कि आप आजकल बहुत सारे जो आप कस्टमर केयर पे जाओगे तो पहले आप एक एआई चैटबॉट से बात कर रहे हो. आई एम वेरी श्योर दैट इट इज इरिटेटिंग. यू वांट टू टॉक टू सम पर्सन. सो दिस इज दैट आपने टेक्नोलॉजिकल अपग्रेडेशन तो कर लिया, बट उसका यूटिलिटी कितना है. So it talks about this breakthrough, that yes, there is a technological breakthrough, but how practical it is. At the current level of development, how practical it is, okay? A very important thing which we need to highlight, that how human beings are different than the current capability of artificial intelligence. I'm mentioning this, I should be very clear. I'm talking about current capability. We are considered a conscious species. We have consciousness. How does that consciousness originate? We do not know. But consciousness is more than simple reasoning capability. Consciousness involves that genuine feeling of happiness and sorrow. Consciousness involves that you give value to your existence. Consciousness involves the emotions you feel, the emotional understanding. It goes beyond intelligence. So ChatGPT, if it makes a mistake, it can tell you sorry. But when you make a mistake, you can also tell sorry, because the pattern you have learned that in certain cases you should say sorry, but sometimes you can feel sorry. And that AI is not capable of. Right? So this is where human beings are different compared to artificial intelligence, that we have consciousness. And people at levels of consciousness, they create new ideas. ChatGPT or Gemini can create an image, but can it create an original artwork? No, it cannot. By the way, अगर UPSC में question आए, even with all the capability, कि AI is capable of creating an original musical idea, original art piece, the answer is no, it is not. Right? It should be very clear that a lot of people also inspire and copy things from others. ये बहुत clear होना चाहिए कि a lot of people also do that. But many people, they do create new ideas. AI can help you in research, but it is not going to help you in coming up with a research idea. If you do want a research which matters, if you want to answer a question which is not letting you sleep, then that question you are going to ask. And AI is not going to ask that question. This is where human mind is different from artificial intelligence, that we operate at a higher level. We are capable of performing n number of things. We are capable of generating new ideas, which AI is not capable of as of now. Maybe we will figure out what leads to this consciousness. Maybe we will develop what is called artificial general intelligence or a super intelligent AI. Maybe we will develop that. But as of now, it seems that it is very far away. Reliability is another problem. AI has biases. Why it has biases? Because human beings have biases. And AI is trained upon data. So if the data contains biases, then it can ingrain those biases and it can then perpetuate those biases. And few examples which I give generally in class, I was so glad to see those examples. Autonomous car causing an accident because some part of pedestrian at some part of the road was not part of the training data. It did not consider that person as a person because it was not part of the training data. Certain AI tools which are used during recruitment, they tend to reject more female candidates. Why? Because the employment scenario वहाँ पे ज़्यादा male है, male dominated industries हैं. So बहुत सारे जो jobs होते हैं अब जो initial level of rejection है, that is done by AI. Human beings are not doing that. 3 positions हैं, 300 applications होंगे, मान लो 20 लोगों का interview होगा, तो बाकी लोग जो reject हुए हैं, that rejection is being done by artificial intelligence. And AI tends to reject more candidates of color and more female candidates. There are allegations like that. So there are biases, right? And if AI is learning those biases, it can perpetuate those biases. Then there is a problem of accountability. Human beings, we want accountability. If some problem has occurred, if an error has occurred, we want accountability. Now imagine if an autonomous car has caused an accident, has killed a person, who should I hold accountable? Should I hold accountable the person who owns the car? Is it accountability of the company which has made that car? Is it accountability of the company which developed that particular AI tool which could not take the correct decision? Is it because of the telecom sector, telecom company for which this AI was dependent upon its decision making? So who should I hold accountable for such type of problem? Right. So this is another challenge associated with artificial intelligence. Then the next set of challenges are challenges of resource, challenges of infrastructure. AI के लिए जो computational power है, ये जो normal chip जो हम यहाँ पे use करते हैं, ये काम नहीं आएगा. We need very specifically designed chips for it. We call them graphic processing units, GPUs. These graphic processing units are capable of doing multiple calculations simultaneously. We call this parallel processing. There is a word for it. This word is called parallel processing. That they're capable of doing parallel calculation, billions and trillions every second. We need a continuous chip supply. दुनिया में कितने कंपनीज चिप बनाती हैं, आप फिंगर पे काउंट कर लोगे. और ये बहुत ही कॉम्प्लिकेटेड सप्लाई चेन है. तो पूरा एक कंपनी कोई भी नहीं है. मैक्सिमम जो फाइनल चिप वो मैक्सिमम ताइवान में बनता है. बट देयर आर सम कंपनी ऑफ स्वीडन जो कुछ एक पार्ट उसका कर रही है. कोई और कंपनी है जो सिलिकॉन को रिफाइन कर रही है. कोई और कंपनी है कुछ और कर रही है. सो देयर इज अ वेरी कॉम्प्लेक्स सप्लाई चेन. एंड कोई भी एक पार्ट अगर डिसरप्ट हो गया फॉर एनी रीजन, then that leads to shortage of chips. It did happen few years ago and it can happen even in future. We need huge amount of land for data center. ये जो servers हैं, जो ChatGPT के जो servers हैं, they need huge amount of land. And most importantly, they need huge amount of data. That is the lifeblood of AI. It is trained on data. And as we already have established, data can have biases. So कौन से डेटा पे आप ट्रेन कर रहे हो ताकि AI does not have those biases, that becomes very important. There is a very good example. Few years ago, Microsoft made a Twitter handle of a AI program with the purpose that it has to become popular. And it did become popular. You know why? Because it learned all the conspiracy theories on the internet, started posting conspiracy theories, racist tweets, tweets against black people, tweets against Jews, multiple gender biased tweets, and Microsoft had to shut down that within 24 hours. So that tells you that it should be, the training data should be filtered data. ये filter कौन करेगा? ये भी human beings करेंगे. तो जो human being का जो requirement है, that is called human intervention, that has not gone away. तो chatbot में जैसे मैंने एक example लिया, that you become irritated when there is a AI chatbot. But it is not limited to chatbot. बहुत जहाँ पे critical decision लेना हो, कोई legal decision लेना हो, बहुत सारे legal ideas are in conflict with each other. You cannot rely upon AI. That will be some person. आपको बहुत close medical call लेना है doctor को. That will be decided by a person. As a bureaucrat, somebody has come to you for some assistance. It does not fit into typical rules and regulations, but you do know that this is a very specific, relevant requirement. Some old lady has come to you that मेरा आधार linkage नहीं हो पाया because my fingerprint has eroded. उसके कारण उनका जो उनका benefit है नहीं मिल पा रहा है. You know it is a government problem. कि आधार लिंकेज नहीं हो पाया बिकॉज उनका फिंगरप्रिंट इरोड हो गया है. इट इज़ योर प्रॉब्लम, बट यू आर बाउंड बाय रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशंस कि अगर लिंकेज नहीं है तो बेनिफिट नहीं मिलेगा. आप ब्यूरोक्रेट हो, आप खुद का तो नहीं कर सकते. बट इवन इन दैट केस यू कैन थिंक ऑफ इनोवेटिव सोल्यूशन कि मीनवाइल कोई और स्कीम से हम कुछ सपोर्ट दे सकें. बट एन AI विल नॉट बी एबल टू डू दैट. सो शोइंग एम्पैथी टू पीपल इन नीड, that requires that emotional understanding which AI is not capable of doing that. So these are some of the areas we should appreciate what AI is not capable of. There are other challenges, huge capital. ChatGPT अभी भी profitable company नहीं है. जो OpenAI है वो profitable company नहीं है. They have poured billions and billions of dollars and they are not profitable company. Electricity consumption. आप एक simple जो query पूछते हो ChatGPT से, that consumes 10 times more energy than a simple Google search. That, and given the fact that most of the electricity is coming from burning fossil fuel, I just told you in the previous topic, AI is not considered environment friendly at all. That artificial intelligence has, because of all of these large data servers, you have huge amount of carbon footprint. Cooling. Even this computer requires a cooling mechanism. It heats up. As it does calculation, it heats up. Now we are talking about very powerful computers, thousands of them running in tandem. Such places require huge investment in cooling. Fresh water, supply of minerals, and essential land use. Land which was used for, let's say, some forest, some agricultural land, and you are using it for now making a data center. So there are multiple challenges associated with current advancements in artificial intelligence. And we should talk about those challenges also. That is the main crux of this chapter, that we should talk about those limitations and those challenges also. Then at the end of the chapter, the last part of the chapter talks about that there are opportunities. And to discuss that, it goes back to history. That let's say when Industrial Revolution happened in Britain, a lot of people lost their job. There was a very famous movement, it is not mentioned in your economic survey, but I should tell you, there is a very famous movement called Luddite movement. Luddite movement started attacking machines, started destroying machines, that they are taking away our jobs. What will we do? But when you look back with the, of course, benefit of hindsight, then you realize that a small island country, which we call England, ruled a larger part of the world. And that was fueled by Industrial Revolution. And even today, per capita GDP of England is one of the highest in the world. So the point is that it's not a zero-sum game. What do I mean by that statement? That it's not that only job replacement is going to happen. Automation always also creates multiple new type of jobs. Jobs which you may think does not exist And the reason you think it does not exist, because you think only limited activity can be done in an economy. But that is a false assumption. हमारे desires unlimited हैं. Right? We will always need for something. That is the cause of our dukh, sorrow. बुद्ध कह के चले गए हैं बहुत साल पहले. But we always need for something. So our desires are unlimited. Because of that, economic activities are also not limited. So there is always going to be new opportunities. So automation not only leads to job losses, it also creates opportunities. And this is what it talks about. That impact of automation from past, yes, it led to some immediate job losses. And yes, it can lead to social unrest such as Luddite movement. But if you invest in ensuring and enabling institution along with stewarding institution, then it can also be a force of good. That AI can also help in augmenting labor productivity, where human beings and AI are working in tandem, and it can augment labor productivity. ATM का example दे रखा है आपके survey में. In general, आप बैंक का example ले लो. When bank computerization started, all the bank unions went on a strike. कि हम ये सारा computer काम करेगा, हम क्या करेंगे? But think about again from the benefit of hindsight, that the job in banking sector actually increased due to that computerization. More and more opportunities occurred in banking sector. The only thing is that you have to now learn new skills, right? A simple going to office and going to lunch will not help. You also have to do multiple things, right? So, but the point is that multiple new skills were required because of that technological upgradation. So it's not, we can augment our productivity, we can augment the productivity of the workforce, and AI can act as a skill development. In countries like India, where most of the people are employed in low skilled and medium skilled jobs, AI can be a great enabler that you can learn multiple things in a very short span of time because of artificial intelligence, right? So there are opportunities also. And opportunities are not limited to, as I said, that people becoming skilled who are employed in low skilled and medium skilled job, but also in advanced research, that some of the best scientists, they are using artificial intelligence in their scientific endeavors. The best example I can give you is Nobel Prize in Chemistry of last year. Protein folding problem. A very complicated problem that आपके पास amino acid का sequence है और आपको protein का 3D structure बताना है. And AI can help you in solving that problem. And this is just one. There are many such problems. A few years ago, an ancient Roman manuscript was deciphered with help of artificial intelligence. अभी आपने पढ़ा होगा न्यूज़ में तमिलनाडु government has announced deciphering of Indus script. I am so hopeful that somebody will develop some AI tool and will decipher Indus script. The point is that this requirement that we want to decipher Indus script, only human beings can think of that. This machine cannot think. This is what I meant earlier, that we operate at high pedestal, right? We can create, we can innovate, we can think of new ideas. AI cannot. But AI can help in implementation of those new ideas. That is the meaning of this last point, that even in advanced scientific research, it can help us. We can utilize artificial intelligence. And the last part, I really love this part of the analysis. That we often think that we have to skill ourselves based on market requirement. But आपका जो question था, what if market requirements keep on fluctuating? Then what are you going to do? So एक बहुत important, which I really loved in this particular conclusion part of देखना, conclusion से just पहले जो part है, I really love this analysis. कि जब हम बात करते हैं that we need to raise the quality of workforce, which means that we are talking about skilled workforce. It is not limited to leveraging AI. जैसे मान लो आपका immediate goal ये है कि आप जाके Gen AI सीख लो, generative AI आप सीख लो, because ये बड़ा demand में है, आपने generative AI सीख लिया. Yes, immediately there are job benefits. But what if even that becomes obsolete? So survey then talks about that we need to focus on foundational skills. And what are foundational skills? Foundational skills are critical thinking. Foundational skills are your soft power, your communication, your creativity, that you can create an art piece, right? Even if you are making a reel, you can make a good reel. You are not simply copying somebody, right? So even that is, maybe that can be a soft skill which you have learned. So focus on foundational skills soft skills, core competencies, critical thinking, strategic thinking, original thinking, all of those things, right? And that is why there is a lot of value even to liberal arts, right? I'm an engineer by education, so I often had this, sorry to use this word, but I had this attitude कि ठीक है liberal arts क्या ही है. But I'm really sorry, this was my past attitude, but now I have come to appreciate that a lot. That liberal arts has a lot of value because it teaches you that core competency that you can fit yourself in any situation as per requirement. You can become a good communicator. You can analyze social situations, political situations, economic problems. You can apply ideas independently without somebody telling you that this is the idea which needs to be applied. So that original thinking, that is part of the competency skill, okay? And the last part of this survey is that in some areas, जैसे banking में हुआ, that when technological development happened, more employment occurred. So survey uses an economic line here that new technology should increase employment if the demand elasticity for the sector is high. That if technological upgradation happens, and because of that the sector becomes more productive, right? Then it can generate new employment. Just think about automobile sector. Automobile में automation हुआ कि पहले लोग assembly line में खड़े हैं, लोग खड़े होके बस दिन भर एक काम कर रहे हैं. Those jobs are now done by artificial intelligence. That led to reduced cost of production, right? Economies of scale happened, cost of production reduced, and now more people are capable of buying cars. And आज से 100 साल पहले it was like a luxury thing, only few people can buy it. So it leads to overall growth in the economy and it does generate new employment opportunities. So it depends upon what type of sector it is. That if technological upgradation is also leading to more productivity and elasticity, demand elasticity, then it can generate new employment in that particular sector. We need to figure out what are those sectors. And survey already had some suggestions. Financial service is one of that sector, that it has high elasticity, that with advancements in artificial intelligence, this market is a very unsaturated market. Most of the people, they still go after traditional things, कि fixed deposit करा लेते हैं, recurring deposit करा लेते हैं, gold खरीद लेते हैं. Still very few people go and buy stocks, future and options. So financial service is a very undersaturated market, and with technological advancement, learning of skill, it can generate new employment opportunities here. In health services also, that frontline workers, they can be more prepared about disease assessment, about diagnosis. Retail and wholesale. Retail and wholesale, immediately yes, some job losses can happen, but it can also generate new employment. Teaching is not. So my job is threatened. So teaching is an inelastic sector in this particular based on artificial intelligence. The demand of teachers may reduce if AI becomes more and more prominent, and that's fine. That's fine. This is how market evolves. I also have to upskill myself. I need to think about reskilling myself, that still this class has a lot of value, that this delivery has a lot of value. So I need to work on my upskilling, right? So this is what we all should also think about. Telecom is a saturated market. There is low elasticity. And survey uses this word reinstatement effect. Reinstatement effect is used in multiple domains. If you are using that in economics, it simply means that when new tasks are created, it increases labor demand and labor share. So AI can lead to reinstatement effect, that in many sectors, it can generate new employment opportunities. And we have to think about AI not only as a fear that it can disrupt the labor scenario, it can also create many job opportunities. And based on that, it leaves the concluding remark, leaves on certain questions for policymakers. One of the question, very pertinent question is, what were the problems in the world that demanded AI as the answer? First question. Second question, what are the skills which we can impart on our children right now that 18 years and 20 years down the line, they are employable? And these questions do not have straightforward right answer. The future is uncertain, right? It always has been uncertain. People have always felt that whatever we are learning right now, it is going to become obsolete. I was watching an interview by Yuval Noah Harari, the author of book Sapiens. And he says that every time people have thought that whatever skills we have, maybe it will become obsolete 20 years, 30 years down the line. But he says that this fear is perhaps the most pertinent fear right now. But then I was also thinking that every generation has thought the same, that this fear that whatever skills you have is going to become obsolete 30 years down the line. Every generation has thought that. And every time it was the most pertinent fear. Right? Maybe this time it is actually real, or maybe it is not. That time will tell. But meanwhile, we have to prepare ourselves. We have to work on our foundational skills. We have to reskill, upskill ourselves. And policymakers have to invest in building strong institutions, ensuring institutions, enabling institutions, and stewarding institutions to tackle this particular problem. Now, if you have any questions from this topic, you can ask questions. नहीं, बट आप ऐसा आपने मान लिया है कि एआई सिर्फ चैलेंज ही है. इस पूरे चैप्टर का जो मेन एक फोकस ये है कि एआई डज नॉट हैव टू बी ओनली अ चैलेंज. इट कैन ऑल्सो क्रिएट मल्टीपल अपॉर्चुनिटीज. इट कैन significantly help in reskilling, upskilling of many people. Most of the jobs are low-skilled jobs in India. Many people can reskill themselves, upskill themselves with help of artificial intelligence. It can be a challenge, and job loss is not the only challenge. As we discussed, biases, transparency, multiple challenges are also there, accountability, all of those challenges are also there. But it can also lead to a lot of opportunities. तो अगर हम एक इस तरीके का हमारा एटीट्यूड हो कि नहीं हम ये अलाउ ही नहीं करेंगे, देन ये जो डिमांड इलास्टिसिटी वाला जो पूरा पॉइंट था, दैट टेक्नोलॉजिकल अपग्रेडेशन लीड्स टू मोर एम्प्लॉयमेंट रादर देन लीड्स टू लॉस ऑफ एम्प्लॉयमेंट, वी आर गोइंग टू लूज अपॉन दैट. तो ये जो नी जर्क रिएक्शन है कि नहीं हम एआई ऑटोमेशन नहीं करेंगे, एआई नहीं करेंगे, दैट मे नॉट बी गुड फॉर द नेशन. That is one of the conclusion of the, it's not saying that future is certain. It is simply saying that yes, immediately it can cause labor disruption. We need to prepare ourselves for that. But we also need to prepare ourselves for the opportunities it is going to create. अभी करंट लेवल ऑफ डेवलपमेंट में बहुत सारी चीज़ें हम बात कर सकते हैं. जैसे एक बड़ा मेरा फेवरेट एक पॉडकास्ट है. I came across a statement, I love that statement. I am going to tell you that we all should aspire for working above APIs. APIs are these application programming interfaces. Think about it, APIs का function क्या है कि मुझे कुछ इंटरनेट पे इंफॉर्मेशन चाहिए. एक API is going to bring that information to me from some other data portal. जैसे मान लो कि आप रेस्टोरेंट में जाते हो, आप वेटर को ऑर्डर करते हो, गोज टू द किचन, मेन्यू में सब कुछ है, आपको एक चीज़ चाहिए, वेटर आपका गया शेफ़ के पास, वो चीज़ लेके आ गया. सो जैसे मान लो आपको मेक माई ट्रिप पे कुछ टिकट बुक करना है, तो आपने गूगल क्रेडेंशियल्स अपना यूज़ कर लिया, आपने अपना जीमेल नेम यूज़ कर लिया. तो गूगल ने सारा डेटा नहीं शेयर किया, बट सम डेटा, रेलिवेंट डेटा कि आपका ईमेल आईडी क्या है, फ़ोन नंबर क्या है, नेम क्या है, वो शेयर कर दिया. दैट इज़ द जॉब ऑफ API. APIs allow two softwares to communicate with each other, which are operating on internet. We all need to work above API. We shouldn't be simply a tool that is essentially executing some instruction. Somebody is telling us that you need to do this and you go and do that. We all need to aspire that we are doing creative work. We are analyzing a situation in an original manner. We are doing critical analysis and we are thinking of our own solution. So we should all aspire that we are going to be more creative. And by the way, it has happened. That's the point. Think about all of the assembly line jobs. Assembly line job क्या था कि मैन्युफैक्चरिंग हो रहा है, लोग खड़े हैं, हर कुछ मीटर पे कुछ लोग खड़े हैं, पूरे दिन आपको 10 घंटे एक काम करना है, कि बस एक ही काम करना है, 10 घंटे एक जगह खड़े हो, आप एक काम कर रहे हो. Those jobs are done away with. Those jobs are being done by machines. The idea here is that human mind is made to do great things. Let's utilize our potential, right? And AI can help in realizing that. अब क्या चैलेंज होगा वो एक अलग चीज़ होगी. अभी तो एआई नहीं सोच पा रहा है, बट ये खुद में एक अलग सेट ऑफ चैलेंज होगा. हाँ जी. Niche-based models essentially mean that we are talking about specific applications. For example, let's say applications in healthcare, application in finance, application in law, application in telecom, application in retail. These are niche application. Large language models essentially is this Gen AI which we are using. Let's say for example, which generates content. That आपने कुछ prompt दिया, आपका कुछ request है, based on that it is generating some content. Where should we focus upon? And frankly, we should focus upon everything. We should not focus. ये जो realization और एक तो सबसे पहले ये भी चीज़ है कि why should government focus upon this? Let private sector decide that what is their immediate requirement, and let them decide that what should they focus upon. So Reliance as a company is developing some niche AI, right? Tata Power is developing some, Tata is as a company is developing some other niche AI, some startup is developing some other niche AI, and somebody is developing LLM. Let that also happen, right? Any other question? Chalo. So all the best, guys. If you have questions here, in anything what we discussed, you can always send me a mail.